Good evening, everyone. Welcome to your Sunday night stream of FPL BlackBox ahead of Game Week 1. Still a few game weeks to go. Sunday night stream, well, a bit of a new one for us. I don't think we've ever done a Sunday night before.
I don't know. Have we not done a Sunday evening before? It feels nice, doesn't it? I've just barbecue completed, got a beer here. It just feels nice and relaxed and chilled.
Very nice. What did you have at the barbecue?
Well, I treat myself.
Steaks and Billy with a sea bass in foil and...
Kind of. Billy had a prawn kebab. I had a few lamb cutlets on there. You know,
nice.
So we do it
prawn
nice.
Kebab.
Yeah, he loves his prawn skills.
So Billy Sullens, that is.
How are you, Az? You all right? Enjoying the pre-season?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I did a roast today. I know it's warm, but thought I'd keep the British traditions alive by slaving away in a hot kitchen all afternoon.
You did a roast. This isn't the weather for a roast. That's very.
It was a barbecue would have been a better idea, but it was nice. Yeah. Nice chicken roast. Did some Yorkshires from scratch. Yeah, all good.
From scratch, very impressive indeed. Right, we've got lots to get through tonight. I've hopefully we can do this in 2 hours, but I thought I'd dig into the player list through a different angle, through the value angle. So quite a few tables to get through, some new tables that we haven't used before. Going to look at the best value players as I see it, according to the opening 6 fixtures, but more on that as we delve into the rabbit hole that I've prepared for us. But before that, we've got to thank our sponsor, which is, of course, Fantasy Football Scout. Let's bring that up now. There we go. Few words on Fantasy Football Scout. Of course, they're getting ready for the new season. I think the app is launching very soon, as I think it was meant to be this weekend, but any day now we'll be able to get the app on our phone, and the members area that we know and love will be available mobile, which is that way trouble lies, because I'll probably never be off it. But obviously an incredibly valuable resource for this time of year. And you, of course, still doing bits and pieces. You did the Q&A with Sam the other day.
Yeah, still doing Q&A every week. Sam and I every Thursday. No articles for me this season, but I'll be doing. I'm helping out with the TikTok stuff this
God,
year.
Help us.
Already my TikTok views are like half of Gianni's and everyone else's, but it's fine. They'll pick up. But yeah, still involved in Scout. Obviously, work for them full time. Obviously, don't do that anymore. But big sponsor of our channel and everything else. And you mentioned stats tables. All the stats that we get throughout the season from FPL BlackBox will all come from our lovely partner in Fantasy Football Scout. So check them out. We've got a affiliate link in the description, which you can use. And yeah, good time to get involved in that.
Yes, as I says, all the data that we show tonight has been taken from the Fantasy Football Scout members area and continues to be throughout the season. I'm going to start off. Actually, now you've got a few things to say on memberships, haven't you? Because you've been busy behind the scenes tinkering with the members side of BlackBox. So do you want to talk a bit about that?
I haven't just messaging you little updates, which I'm sure you just go, okay, cool. Yeah, all sounds good. Yeah, bit of a change. Obviously, we're massively grateful for anyone who sponsors FPL BlackBox. And last year, we obviously added in the channel memberships where you could, subscribe on YouTube, chuck us a few quid or even a bit more every month. And yeah, we built like a nice little community off the back of that. Things have changed a little bit. YouTube take a big old cut of those. And also we're running with things like the Discord channel, and YouTube isn't really set up because everything's kind of a manual approach. Anyway, long story short, the channel memberships have changed a little bit. So if you subscribe to FPL BlackBox on the channel, you purely get kind of YouTube-ish type perks. So you get the emojis and the badges, and then you can, that's the bottom tier. You can upgrade and donate a bit more money if you like, but you don't really get a whole lot extra. If you head over to Patreon though, so type in Patreon FPL BlackBox. It's the same amount of money as the top tier on YouTube. So there's no price increases in a way. If you join that Godfather tier Patreon, that's when you get access to the VIP Discord. You're going to get entry into the 2 mini leagues we're running next year, which is the normal FPL league, obviously, and also our predictions league, which is getting a bit of a revamp. There's going to be a website and a league and a really cool trophy coming from that. Obviously, there'll be like meetups. Mark and I are planning on doing meetups. You're going to get the screens early on Discord as well before BlackBox goes live, and yeah, loads of other bits too. So if you're thinking of supporting the channel, and we know it's not easy at the moment, but if you can part with a few quid a month, check out the Patreon, see if you like it, or support us on YouTube, or don't bother and just watch us for free.
Just watch us, yeah, absolutely. We love that. Just, of course. No, thanks, Az. Thanks for doing that work behind the scenes. Look forward to seeing the predictions revamp.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that. Really excited for that.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a few of the regulars in tonight. Ron Manager, Francis Logan, Rubber Ducky's in there. Scott, Rohan as well. Who else we got? Craig Frost, of course. BB Defender, Tariq, Jammer. Thank you very much, London Red, Ross Johnson. Thank you very much for supporting us on a Sunday evening.
300 watching. Very nice.
Yeah, I hope we can entertain you after you've had your tea there, and for the next couple of hours, talk about FPL and the way we're shaping up. At the end, of course, we're going to show our latest drafts. Fair to say that the pair of us are not alone in this. The confidence is wavering a bit on going no Haaland.
No. I'm not having this.
No?
I said from the start I would be starting with Haaland. I wasn't like all the other people. Oh, I'm going to have Salah and not go with Haaland. He's too expensive. I knew people would eventually get scared and get him in. And you were, here's my non-Haaland draft. Look at everything I can do with it. And now look at you, one of us. I'm not having that. I was adamant he would not be, and now I want to get rid of him because now everyone's getting him.
Yeah, in my defense, I did say I was going to do a Haaland draft the next day for Scout, and I did show a Haaland draft there. Yeah, I mean it's going to go to the wire. I do think that, and I posted some things on Twitter today in response to I think FPL Matthew saying that he doesn't see any content creators going without him. Obviously there is risk there. I think the general feeling is obviously he's getting the pre-season, he's scoring goals. That's not the massive factor. I think it's because, Salah, Liverpool, they're obviously changing under Slot. We're going to look at this tonight, actually. I've got a bit of a view of what I think Liverpool's tactics are going to be. But it is a transitional phase for Liverpool. And it's like, do you want to go into the season, put in the captaincy and your heavy hitter on a player that's undergoing that transition? Or do you want to go with the reliable source of points that Haaland has been? And we're going to look at his goal involvement for the last 2 seasons. It's absolutely petrifying. I didn't realise how high it was over the 2 seasons. And that's the factor, isn't it? I think Chelsea are going through transition. You're seeing them really struggle pre-season so far.
4-1 was it to Celtic last night?
Yeah.
Oof.
This is it. And obviously the players from the Euros not back yet. We're not seeing Palmer and Trent involved in those teams. And so that's going to be a factor, which means that they're going to get, 2, maybe even only 1 match with their full 11 out to prepare. And because their new managers coming in, it's new systems, do they need more than that? Are they going to hit the ground running straight away? Whereas City, you look at them and think the continuity there is in Haaland's favour, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously City are going to be without Foden for that period, but he's kind of the big loss that they've had. The rest of the team is already starting to pick up minutes, and they're getting goals. And I think they did lose, didn't they? They lost to AC Milan, but obviously making lots of changes and things like that. I mean, the question is, if Haaland had Ipswich at home game week 1 and not game week 2, he'd be 80% owned, I think, in the game. And I can understand why people want to go for Salah, in the first game and target that Leicester game, the Ipswich game, and then move to Haaland for game week 2, because you're getting Ipswich, newly promoted team, tough games, to start with. But I think with Isak at home to Southampton in the first game, that is such a good fixture for him. He started pre-season really strongly. Newcastle, I think, are going to definitely get a couple in that, and then you just move over to Haaland next week. So yeah, Haaland hasn't left my Haaland and Isak, like those two. I'm chopping and changing other areas, but Haaland and Isak, and Palmer, to be fair, but those 3 I haven't moved out.
You've gone Palmer. That's interesting. I'm not seeing Palmer in a lot of drafts. I mean, I love Palmer. He's probably next to Trent my favourite player, but again, it's the fact that he's going to be back late and he won't have time to adapt to Maresca's new system. It makes me a little bit like I'm more on wait and see duty with him. Obviously, the City game is, you look at game week 1. I think, do you want to take players into that game? City at home, is there going to be a lot of goals in that game? What's the returns going to be for Chelsea players? I'm not reading too much into the defensive woes they're having in pre-season, but there's no question that both Liverpool and Chelsea are going to take time to adjust under the new systems. So I don't know, that puts the question mark over Palmer for me.
Yeah, I mean, Nkunku's incredibly popular, isn't he? He's, the 6.5 million asset. He's obviously got a couple of goals, a couple of penalties, though, but, still getting goals and then picking up. I mean, he could be an absolute steal, as Neeraj says, at 6.5, but also he didn't do it last season. Lots of injuries. It's a new role. We don't fully know what his role is going to be in the team. He looks good, but Chelsea could really struggle. And if if we think Palmer might struggle in this new Chelsea team, then what does that mean for the rest of them? I mean, it's obviously a less expensive gamble than Palmer is, but I just think Palmer comes in straight back in as a talisman at a Chelsea team with good fixtures, for the first 5. And I don't want to be. I'm not going to start with Palmer and Nkunku. I haven't seen many people doing that.
No,
and if
it's one or the other, isn't it?
Yeah, if Nkunku's going to be 3.5 million, less and better value, then the downgrade's easy. But I don't want to be trying to scrounge around to get some money to move up to Palmer. So yeah, if he plays no minutes pre-season, then maybe there's a decision to be made. But at the moment, I like the fact Palmer's a bit of a differential. I haven't seen many content creators going at all.
I mean, he is going to play. I mean, I haven't got the diagram I've done the diagram for Slots Tactics. I've done one for Maresca. I haven't got it for today's show, but I'm going to use it probably in a later show before the season kicks off. But I envisage that Palmer will either be wide or more likely be tucked in as one of the 10s. So he's going to be more infield in that pocket that we know we've seen him in, but he's not going to be out wide. He's not going to start out wide right. Again, do you think the change in position, change in system, perhaps going to be even more possession-based under Maresca? Do you think is that not making you think, maybe I should just wait and see? Or you just think he's going to be exactly what we saw last season?
You don't know until you see them play, but he played out on the right. Last year he was brilliant. He played in the 10 last year and was brilliant. He can play on the left. He could play up front, I think. I like this kind of inverting of the fullbacks in, like Reece James. We know he's got a good passing ability. If he's kind of threading balls over the top to Nkunku or Palmer, whoever, I think it makes them good options. I mean, there's risk associated with all. I mean, Saka, has played a lot of minutes. You could argue, has he played too many? Does he need a bit of time to come in? Foden, kind of the same. Playing almost every minute of England's. There's pros and cons you can make of any, but I'm looking at it and thinking, looking at those fixtures, looking at Palmer's role in that team and just think, I don't want to be without him. I think after a few weeks, I think I said it last time, I'm looking at moving Haaland down to potentially Foden.
Are you?
And then that frees up some other areas to do other things. Because I think if Saka, Foden were, there was no Euros, for example, I think then I would be toying with the idea of no Haaland and trying to, sort of cram in as many of those as I could. But for now, I like Haaland and Palmer as the 2 premiums.
Okay, fair enough. We'll touch more on that as the show goes on, no doubt. I wanted to go back to the BPS though, because while we did a show a couple of weeks ago about the BPS changes and we dug into that, since that show, Above Average FPL did an excellent podcast and stream on the BPS with the help of Pete from FPL.Team. And yeah, go and watch that because it dives into the details in a lot of detail, a lot of depth.
Great research.
Goes through each team. What Pete did was to basically replay the matches and basically calculate the points changes as a result of the BPS changes that we spoke about. Now, largely, what we anticipated would happen has happened to the outcome. Goalkeepers have taken the big hit. Defenders like Porro and Trippier have taken hit on not getting BPS and therefore bonus in games where their teams concede a goal, whereas last season they did. You see here that Porro is due to lose 10 bonus points as a result of the BPS changes. Interestingly, the big gain is for Havertz. That's because of his positional change from a midfielder to a striker. He would gain 12 bonus, but obviously what you've got to build into that is the fact that he'll lose a point for every goal he scored being a forward, and he'll also lose all the clean sheet points. Yeah. And actually in the tables I'm showing tonight, he's the only player I've treated like this, but I've built him as if he would get the points as a forward from last season. So I've looked at that and built that in because I think it's important, because Havertz is a player who a lot of us are flirting with, aren't they, really? It's kind of like if you don't go Saka, if you don't go Odegaard, getting some Arsenal cover, Havertz gives you that route. Are you worried by his change to midfield? And do you think like the extra bonus points that he'll get, which obviously he'll get and take away from Odegaard and Saka, do you think that's going to be a big swing?
Well, he got 13 goals and 16 clean sheets. So that's 29 of his points came from those.
Yeah.
He'd get 12 more bonus. So he's 17 points down in total, which, I mean, how many points? He got 180 points. So he'd be on what, 168? Is that 12 points? Did I say 12 or 17?
Yeah.
I remember.
17 he would lose. So
17, yeah.
175,
So 163 he'd be on. I mean, is that that's an okay return for an 8 million forward? But he had a very good season last year for Arsenal. So it's whether he builds on that again or he drops back a little bit. I don't know. The jury's out of him a bit, isn't it? Because 23 returns was a very good return for him when he's obviously struggled in previous years. Would you? Okay, that's 163 points. Would you pay 8 million for that?
Well, I think the fact for me though is that he didn't really flourish when he first arrived at Arsenal. It took a couple of months for him to get ingrained in that system, and obviously the loss of Xhaka really did hurt them initially. There was a lack of fluidity in their attacking play for the first part of the season, and it kind of clicked for Havertz and Arsenal. So I do think, with a pre-season, obviously he's been away with the Euros, so he will miss some of the pre-season as well. But you just think that he could pick up where he left off last season straight away, and I think that would see him beat his score of last season. Or beat his number of returns. Whether that will beat his score will depend, how the odds go with the clean sheets, I guess, as well. But obviously he's going to take some bonus from Odegaard and Saka, right? So that's going to be a factor. I think Saka's down here as losing 3 bonus points, I think, overall. So not a big loss. Where is he down here? I'm sure he's down here somewhere on the list. But he would be basically up against Havertz, because for the first time they'd have a number 9 who could score goals. Arsenal didn't have that last season, so Saka and Odegaard didn't have that to contend with. So it would be a factor. I think that is significant, that change of position there. Other winners here, Maddison, Richarlison, are these players that we're going to consider? When we get to Watkins, definitely is, but I don't think the winners and losers here, it's what we said in the episode last time out. It's not hugely significant, but it is a change in the landscape that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, when you talk about these things, it's hard to kind of contextualize exactly how, like the points wise. And I think the research you did on the last one was really interesting, because you said, in this specific game, this player would drop out of the bonus, this player would get in, and it's kind of panic stations. You look at this. The highest change is Havertz, for example, and Maddison, if you exclude the positional changes, with 9 points. So it's not incredibly dramatic. How many points did Maddison get last season? He probably got about. He was injured for quite a lot of it, wasn't he? So he got 117 points. So to be fair, that's what, like 7 or 8% increase in the points that he would have got based on those things. So it's fairly significant for him. I think Watkins as well. 7 points is okay, but then he played the majority of minutes. I think it's bigger. I think for Maddison, who had those reduced minutes, because I would expect if he played the full minutes, that could have been like 18, 20 points different. And then suddenly it's like, okay, 18 to 20 points on the 7-5 Maddison compared to a 6-5 Johnson. That's now maybe a little bit more of a consideration, when Johnson, I think, was the clear favourite before it. So I don't know. I look at this and I think, for the players that are playing quite regularly, maybe it's not a huge thing, but for someone with low minutes who's featured on this list, maybe it's a little bit higher. So yeah, Maddison, my boy, he was in my draft last week.
You're not going there. You're not going there. Don't.
He's not in it. He's not in it this week, but yeah.
No, I've got a Spurs player in my team, actually. I've got a couple.
I wonder who that could be.
It's very clear where the losses have come from. Pedro Porro and Vicario losing 16 points from bonus, and obviously 18 of that going to Maddison and Richarlison. So that's the transition for Spurs, and that's what we'll see in all the teams. It'll be the goalkeepers and some of the attacking defenders that will lose out, and it'll be the attacking players, as we've seen here, that will benefit. That's the gist of what we said. But what you can do is go to FPL.Team and look at Pete's work, which is really in depth. You can get it broken down by team as well down the bottom here, and by game week. So it's really worth having a look at that if you're interested in knowing more about that. And yeah, do check out the Above Average FPL podcast as well, which was a really good insight into how it's going to go. That's not the focus tonight, though. It will play into it. The focus tonight really is to look at FPL value.
I suppose just really wanted to really quick on Muric. He only played 900 minutes. He got how many bonus he get? He got 12 bonus, and he wouldn't have got any. Yeah,
cleaned him out completely.
Brutal.
So harsh, isn't it?
Promoted goalkeepers. For anyone who's thinking of taking a bit of a punt on one of those, you've got to pick a goalkeeper who gets clean sheets. Now the saves just aren't enough. So it does. I think it does change the way we pick, because I think in the past we've had promoted goalkeepers don't do quite well. Like when Heaton came up, he was an absolute save machine. They were conceding goals, but he was making loads of saves. Not really enough. Not really enough now.
Pete, thanking us for the shout. No worries, Pete. Keep up the good work with FPL.Team, of course. We'll see you throughout the season, another season with FPL.Team. Let's have a look. Let's start looking at our tables then, because we've got a lot to get through. So let me talk about my methods. Let's expand.
Oh,
let's get closer on the table. There we go. A bit of a close-up view of the data there for people watching on their TVs. So basically, the metric that I started with was just points per 90. I thought what I'd do is look at each position for points per 90. And then I built my own key performance indicator tables, KPI tables. People who work in very boring jobs know what KPIs are, key performance indicators. And they've got these on the Scout website, but the way they present them is slightly different to the way I present it here. What I've done here is look at touches in the box per 90, shots per 90, shots in the box per 90, chances created per 90, XGI non-penalty per 90, and of course points per 90. And where it's green, it means that they've increased in that metric from this season 23-24. I say this season 23-24 versus 22-23. So it's basically green represents progress for that metric, pink or red represents a deficit, a decline in performance for that metric. So that's important as we go through. And then in pink and white, I've highlighted the players that, in my opinion, are the players that are in the pool that we could consider. So in other words, they're players that's largely governed by players that I think are going to be regular starters for their team or could possibly be regular starters for their team. And the reason why I've highlighted Bradley there is something that we'll get into later when we look at slots tactics. There's a chance he could get the right back slot and Trent invert or play a midfield role. So he's on there. But largely the players in pink are players that I consider to be certain starters and therefore players that we're going to consider. We could consider Ake, we could consider Estupiñán, Maguire, but these are players that we'd be taking a risk with if we go there. So that's the starting point, and that's going to be the case for every position. And then we're going to bring in other metrics that adds kind of more context to value in a moment. But just looking at points per 90, no surprise to see the Arsenal defenders dominating. Ben White at the top there in terms of, players that we would consider, 5.48. The first question I've got for you is Arsenal and their defence. And I guess Ben White. I'm not seeing Ben White in a lot of teams. Everyone's kind of defaulting to Gabriel or Saliba. They have, of course, increased their defensive roster with, is it California, the Italian, who hasn't officially signed, I don't believe, but it's very much almost over the line. He's going to play left back, we feel, but could also threaten Saliba and Gabriel in the centre.
He's not. He ain't threatening Saliba.
No, he's not, is he? I mean, that's why. Are we going into another season with Gabriel under threat? I don't know.
Surely
why
not.
is it? Why is it? Is it the extra 0.5 is just too much? It's too rich for our blood, and that's why we're not seeing Ben White in a lot of teams.
It's funny, because this time last year we were saying exactly the same thing. We were saying, why on earth would anyone pay 5.5 for Ben White when you can have Gabriel and Saliba for 5? And he absolutely blitzed it as the top scoring defender. And we mocked that price at the time, and it was bang on. I mean, we're not really mocking it now because we've seen kind of what he's capable of. But I do think it's been a bit inflated by those 2 goals that he scored in that double game week in the first game of that. I mean, you look at the numbers here. His XG non-penalty per 90 is identical to what it was the season before. Some of the other data is good. I mean, he is creating more chances. He is having slightly better touches in the box. But obviously, the quality of those chances is in and around the same. 6.5 for Ben White. That's approaching like Trent levels or Robertson when he was hitting 200 points. I'd be surprised if Ben White got close to 200 points again this season, wouldn't you? Feels a lot. He's not. I still don't really see him as an attacking defender. Is that maybe not the right? He's not like a Porro or a Trent or a Trippier. It's
interesting. It's interesting because Evercon says Timber can play right back. He can, but actually before the show, I was watching Arteta talk about Timber and why he played Timber at centre back last night in the friendly. And he played Ben White. He didn't play him right back. He played Ben White there, and he basically is talking about the relationship that Ben White has with Saka and with Odegaard on that side, and how important the athleticism of Ben White is, and that relationship with Saka. So that could be a factor that keeps him there. and continues to see him flourish. I mean, the big question is, are Arsenal going to be so dominant as a defensive force? Because they were by far and away the only defence we could rely upon. City weren't at that level at all. Do you think that's going to happen again, or do you think Liverpool and City might close that gap a bit?
I think they've got a brilliant spine and a great squad. You know, having Declan Rice with Gabriel and Saliba, who've obviously got a great partnership. They've strengthened with the new Italian coming in. They've obviously got Timber coming back, who's been mentioned. Ben White's an excellent player. Ray is an excellent goalkeeper as well. Like I'd expect them again to have the most clean sheets next season. It's just we talked about the bonus and with Gabriel, well, he has the most shots of all defenders, I believe. So that's going to improve his BPS potential in that regard for 0.5 less, unless you think he's going to lose his place. But I don't think he can, because he had a really strong season last year in the end, despite a bit of a shaky start. And I'd be surprised if that partnership was broken up to try something new, because they didn't lose the league because of the defence. They lost the league, I guess, because in big games they maybe a couple too many draws, or in that Man City game, for example, they didn't quite do enough to win the league. But he's not looking at the defence and thinking, yeah, I really need to make a big significant change to this defence.
Yeah,
no chance. He wants to keep it settled.
Yeah, he does. And actually, what he said tonight in the post-match presser was, he played Timber where he did, and he played White where he did, because he only wanted to make one change and not two. And that's a factor, isn't it? When you're changing the back four, you do it incrementally. One change maybe is all you would make. You wouldn't want a complete, rehash of the back four. So that says to me that he likes the idea of stability back there, which would mean that Gabriel and Saliba will start the season unless there's a huge drop-off in form. That'll be the case with Ben White at right back. I don't see that changing. It'll be interesting to see if Liverpool and City. I would pick those two out. I think Chelsea are going to take time to settle. But if defences are going to close the gap, I think it'll be those two. I do expect Liverpool to be tighter under.
Do you? Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think they will be. I think they'll be. Yeah, I think they'll. The style of football will be perhaps more akin to being more secure. But I mean, having said that, they do play out from the back a lot under Slot. They've done that in the first friendly. They take risks, so they could concede goals by being pressed. So there's risks in the way Slot plays. But I do think there could be an upturn, maybe by a couple of clean sheets in Liverpool's output. But we desperately need that, don't we?
Yeah, we do. I just don't see that same spine, that same stability from Liverpool. Szoboszlai's being moved up. We need to like the 10 role.
Yeah, we'll talk about that
now. So that means McAllister's going to stay probably as like the deep lying midfielder. I mean, he's an excellent player, but he's more of an attacking player. Started on the left wing for Argentina. I still see him as a 10. He can play the deep lying role, and then who's he play kind of alongside? And then centre backs. I mean, Van Dijk is obviously brilliant, but who's his partner for the season? Is it going to be Gomez? Is it going to be Konate? Right back, we know about Trent's kind of defensive liability, and I don't think Robertson is really the same player that he was a few seasons ago. So I have a few more question marks around that, whereas I look at Arsenal's spine and defence and think this is only going to get better, maybe, or at least stay the same, whereas Liverpool's I see as a bit more of an unknown. They're the only defence I trust, Arsenal, because I look even Man City, Chelsea, Manchester United, Yoro's now injured. So it's going to be more reliant on Martinez, who's also probably going to get injured at some point because he seems to always be injured as well. And Spurs can see too many goals. Like, where else are the clean sheets going to come from? It's going to be Arsenal, Man City again, but Arsenal look more solid defensively for me.
Yeah, I mean, Trent's up here, 5.10 points per 90. So a strong season for him, even though we didn't come away from the season saying that was one of his best by any means. But all these KPIs are up. Shots per 90 up 0.73. Shots in the box up 0.32. Chances created up 0.49. And overall points per 90 up 0.30. So a strong season for Trent compared to the previous season. I think that's more about the fact that the previous season was quite a low key one for him. He hadn't hit the heights, and his role is still yet to be defined, isn't it? But I'm seeing Trent a lot of teams. He is in mine, but I am beginning to waver on him because of the uncertainty and the lack of pre-season that he'll get. Where are you on Trent and Robertson in particular?
Yeah, I've got Trent. I've had him pretty much since the start, because obviously the Liverpool fixtures are really good, and you feel like you want to tap into that somehow. I think Trent he feels like a nice alternative to Salah, we've seen, I've gone against Salah a few times like the last few seasons in spells. I'm not talking about a whole season, but we know that, Trent's got a free kick in him. He's got the assist potential. And we saw Salah slow down a little bit last season in the sense that he wasn't getting loads of hat tricks, was he? And he, there was parts of the season when you could go without Salah, really, and it was all about kind of timing with him. I've seen a picture of Trent in pre-season. He looks absolutely ripped, which is always a good sign. But then so does Salah. So there's no question marks around fitness or anything. They both look kind of ready to go. But like you say, my issue with Trent is the role in the side, because obviously he started the games for England at central midfield. That was obviously Southgate's like kind of masterclass tactician plan, and it was a bit of a disaster, really, because he didn't really look comfortable. The passing wasn't really great. He wasn't really adding a huge amount, and then kind of unceremoniously got dropped. So I'd imagine he goes back into right back. There might still be a bit of playing around with his position. Well, a midfield three of McAllister, Trent, and Szoboszlai.
I'm going to bring the slot tactics thing up now, because this is what I looked at, right? And I did some research on slot and the way he's likely to play, and so the option he's got is playing Alexander-Arnold in that right side midfield role, with McAllister in the 6, Szoboszlai and Trent in the 8 or 10 roles. Szoboszlai pushed forward into the 10 role, and as the chart shows here, or as the diagram shows here, it'll be Szoboszlai joining the attack as Gakpo comes deep, or if it's Darwin coming deep. What we saw in a pre-season game last night was Elliott and Szoboszlai in the 10 roles and both pushed forward. The reason for that was they didn't have a central attacker, and Slot's come out and said he's not going to do that, or he's unlikely to do that once he has a central attacker there. It'll just be one of those pushing forward, and I think it will be Szoboszlai, and he's going to be a player we talk about more as we go into more of the rabbit hole of data tonight. But Trent could either play in that 8 role or 6 role alongside McAllister with Bradley at right back, or he could play the right back role, and as the diagram shows here, the right back will push on wide if Salah tucks in, or the right back could come inside alongside McAllister, but it's more likely the left back will do that. Now, I've gone Gomez here because I'm presuming that he's going to want the left back tucking in. Van Dijk and Quansah I've picked as the 2 centre-backs, and then it'll be 3 in front of the centre-backs. Here, it would be maybe Bradley, Gomez alongside McAllister, with Trent given a bit more licence to roam. That could be one way they go. Or, like you say, it could be Trent playing the right back role and then, Endo perhaps playing a more secure midfield role alongside McAllister. Which way do you see it go? Because if Bradley's going to start right back, and there's a few people in the chat saying that could be a huge win for us, a 5 million defender playing right back for Liverpool.
I don't think a double defensive midfield partnership of Trent and McAllister is good enough to survive. And I mean, you look at the back 4. I mean, Gomez is a good player. He's an okay player, but he's not Robertson in his prime. Bradley and Quansah are both very good players with great potential. But again, it's a lot for that right side to be made up of those two. And then obviously Van Dijk and Alisson are world class. But I look at this team and think, God, teams are going to get at this. That midfield is going to get dominated in matches, I think, and they might be very, very powerful on the counter or when they've got the ball. But I think teams are going to win the ball back and break on them really quickly. So I think it needs an Endo or someone who's much more well versed in that DM role to do this. And if that happens, then it's probably going to be Trent that drops out of that, because it'll be Endo and McAllister surely, and then Trent goes back to right back. I mean, it's harsh on Bradley because he was so good last season, and obviously such a talent. I still think like the Trent thing, it just feels a bit shoehorny into that role, and I haven't really seen anything to make me think that Trent is super comfortable there. And this has gone on for quite a while now, so it might very well be that this starts the season and he goes for tactics like this. But if the results aren't good in the first couple of game weeks with good fixtures, he's going to quickly revert back.
Well, this is what I said at the top of the show about when we're going Salah, that he's going to be playing for a team in transition. He will start in that right flank, and I presume he's going to be the one tucking in, and Diaz will be the one running the line on the opposite side, or coming inside at times, because he can do and shoot when cutting inside. But he does like one of his wingers to to run to the line, and it's more likely to be Diaz than you would think than Salah, because Salah's obviously got that massive goal threat arriving on the far post. He does like his central attacker to come deep at times. That, for me, suits Gakpo more, but of course Gakpo could play wide as well. He's got a lot of options in attack in terms of the variety of players.
Attack is fine.
Because Jota's not even on this screen, so you've got to think Jota can play a number of roles as well. But you're probably right. I think it'll be Trent in the right back role rather than Bradley, and then he'll have to get Endo in that team alongside McAllister to reinforce it a bit more. Now, Trent could still invert here. You're saying, the arrow on Bradley there means he could go down the flank, or he can invert alongside the midfielders. So that's still a possibility that we still see Trent playing a midfield role of type, but it would rob us of Bradley, which would be a shame, because that would be amazing if we got Bradley.
Yeah, 5 million playing for Liverpool. I mean, he was obviously 4 million, and if you had him for his 21 points, whatever it was against Chelsea last season, that was kind of I had him for the period where he didn't do so well, which is pretty typical of my season. But yeah, if Bradley comes in at 5, he's going to be very hard to ignore with the fixtures they've got. Yeah, it's really interesting. I just feel I want Trent to be playing in the best position for him, because you mentioned he's your favourite player. I mean, he's just an incredible player. And he's almost it's like people don't really know what to do with him. I mean, I don't really know what to do with him. I don't really know. He feels a bit wasted at right back, but also he doesn't look totally comfortable at central midfield either. So where do you play him?
See, that's the thing though. If we go back, sorry, I got the wrong screen there. But go back there. I mean, Trent is the player that we would spend our money on in defence. 7 million is a drop in price from 8 million. And in terms of points per 90, he rates very well. In terms of value, as we're going to see, we get deeper tonight, he rates well with the fixtures they've got. But we're talking about, we don't know where he's going to play in a system that is changing under a new manager. Is it not a risk to put 7 million down on Trent when it could be just finding their feet in the first 5 or 6 games, and therefore the output from Trent, if it's not going to be clean sheets, because it might not be, will rely on attacking points, and they might not be fluid. So again, just as if we can't maybe take that risk on 12.5 on Salah, can we risk 7 on Trent?
Yes, but I mean, the other side of it is, if we're not going for Salah, can we risk not going for a Liverpool player at all when they've got Ipswich, Brentford, Man United, Forest, Bournemouth, Wolves, Palace, right up to game week 8? And if they do start strongly, and the attack does work, and maybe they do get a couple of clean sheets in there, then Trent is going to be right at the top of the probably the whole game, and then his price is going to be going up. And if there was a player in midfield, if Jota was nailed on to start, or I don't know, Darwin Núñez. Oh, no, not even going to go there. Not Darwin. Anyone else?
He's going to tempt us at some point. We know.
Of course he will. Yeah, he's 75 million, and he's going to get a run. But I don't know if Gakpo was going to start, or Diaz, or someone that we knew we'd get 90 or close to 90 minutes in those first 5 or 6 games, I would probably be going there over Trent. But we haven't got that. I haven't really got the money for Salah, I don't think. So that pushes me towards taking a bit of a gamble on him. But yeah, it could be a bit of an expensive mistake.
Yeah, when the fixtures came out, Liverpool came out with those 6: Ipswich, Brentford, United, Forest, Bournemouth, Wolves. It was pretty certain that we'd have to get some coverage. It's the trouble is, of course, as we're going to mention, and we mentioned already, Gakpo, Jota, Diaz, the options aren't obvious other than Salah and Trent. So if you're not stretching to Salah, which going Haaland and Salah really, I think, is just too much. It takes too much from the rest of your team. So you've got to make a decision between Haaland and Salah. And as we said at the top of the show, I just think the certainty on Haaland is beginning to start pushing things in his favour. Then Trent is the go-to, isn't he? Trent does, with the 5.10 points per 90 last season, he can build on that this season. But it just depends how quickly Liverpool adjust, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the other option, like you've mentioned in the chart, is do we take a punt on Szoboszlai? And he is someone that I've seen mentioned a few times. Yeah. He's creeping into a few teams. He's 6.5 million. But I mean, he got 7 attacking returns last season. So you're relying on him going into this new role and just suddenly being absolutely amazing, because there's a lot of good 6-5 options out there. And I want to see a bit more from it, because again, it's a bit of an experiment, isn't it? I think with him. Talented player, I have no doubt that he can do it, but it's not just about doing it in that role. It's about turning that into attacking returns. And McAllister's an excellent number 10, but he's not someone who delivered consistent attacking returns for Brighton. And last season, when he was kind of playing in a deep role or number 10, he had spells where he'd scored. He scored some really important goals for them, but he was never really an asset for us FPL wise. And I wonder if Szoboszlai would fall back into that role. Good player, like you want him, and you see him score an absolute worldy strike, but you never really buy him for your own team.
Yeah, I mean, if he gets that 10 role that we expect, and that's what we've seen in the first friendly, then he's going to be more involved in Liverpool's at the sharp end. He's been too deep. He's been part of the build-up man. He's been the assister. But we expect that to change under Slot. It's just to what degree will it change, and will it be enough? Will that coverage be enough? We'll touch on him as we get to midfielders. I just want to look at the 4-5 section of defence, because I think it's fair to say that with the BPS change, -4 for goals conceded, we're more mindful of going big at the back to some extent. And I think there's going to be at least one, maybe 2 4-5s in our defence, right? Would you say that would be the case? I think that's what we're seeing in most teams, isn't it?
You say that. I've seen your drafts, and it's very, very heavy in defence, as is mine. So, yeah, you've gone 4 at the back with a 7, a 6, and a 5-5, haven't you?
At the moment,
and a 5. And a 5. So you haven't got any 4-5s, right? Just got the 4.
No, but I've had plenty of drafts with Mikalenko, with Anderson in. And there's no question that when you want to get a 0-5 back, you can drop down to a 4-5 defender. I mean, a good case in point. A good case in point is the Palace defence. You can go Muniz for 5 million, or you can drop down to Joachim Anderson or Gahey for 4.5. And of the 4.5 defenders here, and obviously you do get a drop in points per 90. And I think like Mikalenko is the first player that I've highlighted here that I think we would reasonably consider for our teams. He's in a lot of drafts, I'm saying, because obviously you can cover Everton and you haven't got to spend on Pickford, who's had the price rise, of course. 3.68, I think it is 3.68 points per 90. So that is a decline on, you're going to get less points per 90 out of these players. But Mikalenko, Castagna, Anderson, Byrne, these all cover reasonable defences. We're going to kind of park our expectations to around the 8 to 10 clean sheets mark, aren't we, for these defenders? Maybe Palace could surprise us, because under Glasner they kicked on. Of the 4-5 defences and defenders, where are you most tempted to look at?
Yeah, like I said, I think there's some really good ones. I mean, Concer's not on this list, is he? But he's obviously very, very popular at 4-5. We mentioned about his bonus point potential because he was winning a lot of fouls, won the most fouls, I think, of all defenders, was it last season?
He did 74 fouls, 74 BPS from fouls won he would have got.
And obviously Byrne is popular because they rotate really nicely, and Botman's out for a bit. There's a few people in the chat mentioning Livramento. If Trippier does go to Saudi, I think he's going to be someone he's going to be in almost every team. I think actually at 4-5 with the fixtures Newcastle have got. So he's another one to watch out for. The thing is though that we're probably all going to start with at least one 4-5, but it does make, if we are starting with more premiums, like I've got Trent and Vardy, for example, it does leave me optimistic that say it's not really working out with Trent, well, I just drop him down to a 4-5 in a few weeks, and then I've got that 2.5 million to upgrade the rest of the team, because there's going to be a good 4-5 option, somewhere, because so many teams are able to cover at least one of their defenders with a 4-5 a pick. I've got Castagna on the bench at the moment. Fulham's fixtures are absolutely incredible.
Superb,
yeah, like Van de Ven at 4-5 as well. I know Spurs aren't keeping loads of clean sheets, but we've seen that he's got good attacking potential. Honestly, you can't really go wrong. 8 Nori at 4-5. The fixtures for Wolves aren't great, but he's definitely going to be a factor for us at that price. So yeah, in some ways, although looking at the 4-5s and all the options, I do think it allows you to maybe spend a bit more, because then you can drop down. Just don't fill your team with too many 4 millions, I think. I think having 4 millions is not the way to go.
I'm glad you mentioned 2 millions, because gives you a chance to talk about Valentin Barco, because I know you're going to want to. Tell us more about him, because he's obviously turning up pre-season for Brighton. Estupiñán's
big time.
Estupiñán's out at the moment, so he's got an opportunity to claim that berth on some set pieces as well. I mean, what's the picture at Brighton in that role? Where does he sit when Estupiñán's fit and so on?
It's a great question. I mean, he's looked really, really good pre-season. Barco. You know, he came into the team sort of towards the end of last season when Estupiñán was really struggling. He did well, took his chance well in that. He's very, very highly rated, very highly regarded. I mentioned about him on Football Manager. He's like the wonder kid on Football Manager. You know, all the ratings for him, like potential wise, are like right at the max. You know, that comes from like an extensive scouting network who kind of make these ranks. And he started pre-season incredibly. We scored 8 goals in the 2 pre-season games we've had. We've got some players back fit, like Matoma's back on the left. He's linking up really well with Barco when they're playing, and Barco's taking the corners as well. So I'd be surprised actually if Estupiñán came straight back in to the team, even if he was fully fit. Because if Barco gets a full pre-season behind him and we're playing well and is linking up, is he going to risk that to bring in Estupiñán, who wasn't that great for us, you know, for large parts of last season? The other question is maybe Estupiñán comes into a back 3 and plays at left centre back, and then Barco carries on playing at a left wing back. So the fixtures for Brighton aren't great. I just think, why wouldn't you pick Barco to start with? Because yeah, he's got the potential to be a regular feature for us, potentially on corners, playing for an attacking role for a decent Brighton team. He's just an absolute no-brainer, I think.
Everton, Man United at home, Arsenal away, Ipswich at home, Forest at home, Chelsea away. So the home games are decent. United, Ipswich, Forest. You would play Barco probably for Ipswich and Forest, probably United as well. You wouldn't be playing them away from home necessarily. But if you've got a wing back taking set plays, you know, even when they concede, you've got the chance of a return. Now, getting that from a 4 million defender, we had it from Livramento last season when he broke into Newcastle's team. It's a similar situation with Barco, isn't he? He's not only a 4 million defender who could be playing, he's someone who gives you that little bit going forward as well, right?
Yeah, he is. And, you know, by game week 4 and 5, I would expect Estupiñán to be back, and I would expect it to be a battle between them for the left wing back spot. You know, like we know from Hertz's tactics, he likes a kind of a centre back to go into midfield as well. Yeah. And we've got this new Weaver guy who looks really good, who I think is going to be that player who kind of...
He's the pivot, right?
Yeah, pivot. Yeah. He comes back in defence. He goes up. Obviously, we've got Dunk as well, and then Van Heck. That could well be the 3. Maybe Estupiñán comes in, Weaver moves up to central midfield. But I think there's definitely an opportunity for Barco, and it's one by game week 4 or 5 we're going to know about. I mean, it might be that it's a disaster and he doesn't play, and Estupiñán comes back in, he gets a price drop to 3.9. But my spidey sense is telling me that he's going to be a first team player.
And this is the factor, and Greg Frost acknowledges most people are going to wildcard between 5 and 6 pick players for the first 5 weeks at least. If you know you're going to wildcard, and I'm looking at, you know, potentially wildcarding between game weeks 3 and 4, which is the first international break, or then game weeks 7 to 8, which is the next international break. Those 2 windows look the most likely opportunities that I'm considering. You haven't got, you know, you're not picking a team for like 10, 15 game weeks. You're picking a team for the first, 5 or 6 at most, which is why I've focused on the first 6 game weeks in the data we're looking at tonight. So you could take a risk on Barco at 4 million. I mean, you don't want an inactive player, but if the pre-season friendlies keep going as they are and Barco keeps getting the minutes, I think you're right. I think he is going to start the season in that role, and you'll get you the first 3 or 4 game weeks at least, I would have thought.
Well, he's 5.9% owned at the moment. I can see that increasing between now and the end of the season if things go. So let's say he's at 10%, you know, when the season starts. If he gets an assist from a corner in that first game at 4 million, he is going to be jumped on by thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of managers, because the cheap players who do well in the first week always, you know, see a central rise. Why not put yourself in the position to not have to deal with that? Because if you haven't got him and he does well, you might suddenly be thinking, crap, that's the left wing back from Brighton who's actually looking quite good. I do need to make that move. And then you're having to use a transfer on it. And if you wait 5 or 6 weeks for the wild card, he could be 4-3, 4-5, and then you've lost out on those points. I just think I can't see a team structure where you wouldn't just pick Barco. It's just I think it's a complete no-brainer, that one.
I think for me, it depends on the rotation with the rest of your squad, because I think when we get to my team, we'll look at that in a bit more detail. But I think you're right. We know from previous seasons, it's the value players that fly. It's the 5 million striker that scores a couple of goals, or the 5 million midfielder, or the budget defender that happens to get, if Barco gets an assist and a clean sheet, he is going to accelerate in price because people love value, and that that's the focus of tonight's show. And they'll move quickly for value because it means they can unlock the big hitters with that money. So we know they're the players that are going to shoot up. They're going to be the early bandwagons. If Jared Bowen gets a couple of goals in the first game, he's 7.5. He isn't necessarily going to be a fast bandwagon. But any player who's low in price, who does well early on, everyone's on him.
Well, a Lundstrom or a Wan-Bissaka, these are players in the past that I've not got on early because you don't want to be making a transfer for a 4 million defender. And I look at the 4 million defenders and think he is definitely the one where that could happen. And it might not work out. Like I said, maybe Superman comes in, but at least you're putting yourself in the position to have him. And you can try and be clever and cover it with another 4 million defender, but none of them look as good as me. I mean, he's underpriced. The thing is, he shouldn't be 4 million. He should be 4.5. Lamptey's 4.5. He's as much of a rotation risk in the team as Lamptey.
Yeah, it's an error, isn't it? That.
It is an error, and they're the kind of ones we need to exploit. Honestly, except for the third time, no brainer, Barco. Got to have him.
Okay, let's look at midfielders next. So we're still looking at points per 90, and obviously the highlighted players are the ones that I think are in the pool that we are considering. They're certainly making up, or they're appearing in a lot of sides within the community. No surprise to see Palmer at the top there. Jota sneaking ahead of him because obviously only 14 starts, so limited minutes. But Palmer, 8.39 points per 90. You go down to Salah. I mean, Salah, it's been said, didn't have his best season, but still 7.49 points per 90. Fourth on this table below Jota, Palmer and Trossard. And all his key performance indicators up. Look, chances created, the biggest jump, 0.57 up from the previous season. Shots in the box up 0.42. So we're looking at a player here. I think if Klopp was still manager, he would be in my team, no doubt, and I wouldn't be going Haaland. The only reason that I'm edging towards not having him and going towards Haaland is because of the change in management. Because the data here suggests that this isn't a player in decline, is it?
Well, I was really surprised at this because I thought these metrics would be down. I know his assist potential was maybe up, because he was creating lots of chances, but actually his shots in the box is up, his shots per 90 is up, even his touches in the box was up a small amount, and his XGI non-penalty per 90 is up 0.16, which isn't like nothing. That is quite a jump from the season before. So I did see this and think, oh, this is a bit, a bit concerning for someone who hasn't actually had Salah in their draft and is playing Ipswich in the first week and has a really good run of fixtures. It's seeing this has definitely made me consider moving to a 2, I think, and potentially dropping Trent down, because that's kind of what this is showing, right? It's kind of saying that maybe there is a bit too much risk with Trent, and Salah has done it for so many years. The stats are still there. Because it's Salah or Palmer. You can't build a team with Haaland. I mean, you can, but it's weak. A team with Haaland, Salah, and then another premium like a Watkins or someone else. I think you're too thin elsewhere. So you go Haaland and Salah, and then you fill up your team with 6.5s and 7s. Do you want to do that? Can you get more balance from doing another way? Yeah, it depends what you think about those players around the 10 million mark. But yeah, no, this concerns me. 0.96 as well, points per 90 is up from the season before. Everyone thinks he's going to regress, but he isn't.
Well, it depends on the system. It really does. It depends on his role in Slot's team, because he could play more of a creative role and get into the box less, because we know there's going to be a central attacker there. It could be Gakpo, it could be Darwin. We know it's likely to be Diaz or maybe Darwin or Gakpo on the left. On the right, there really isn't a threat to his role. There isn't anyone else who can come in there, I don't think. He could play Harvey Elliott wide. He could play Jota there, but there's no threat to his starting role. It just depends on how often. If Szoboszlai is going to be playing the 10 and there's going to be more of that running from midfield to join the attacker, is Salah going to be relying upon those far post runs on the end of crosses from Diaz or Robertson from that left-hand side? I don't know. This is it. We don't know how it's going to work under Slot. It's been settled under Klopp for many years. where suddenly it's an upheaval, and that might just be enough to comfort us if we don't go to Salah initially. But the fixtures are the thing. If they didn't have the best fixtures in the first six, it'd be far easier, wouldn't it?
Conspiracy theory for you. So we all thought that Salah was going to be off to the Saudi League, and it doesn't look like he is going to be going. Now, is it because he's had a chat with Slot and Slot said, I didn't like how Klopp was using you last year. I didn't like you being stuck out on the wing. This year, you're going to be playing a lot more centrally, a lot more direct. We're going to go back to getting the ball to you as often as possible. You're going to be the key figure and you're going to get us 30 goals.
But he's not. He's not going to be central. He started pre-season in the same similar role out on the right. And he obviously can still be incredibly dangerous out there. And we know he can score goals. That's where he's been playing under Klopp.
Do you think he's happy? You think he's happy doing that role then? Is kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, of course he's happy. He's happy when he's getting the opportunity to score goals. That's essential to him, though. We know he can be a greedy player. And so I've got every faith that he will continue his level of output. And when we look at his goal involvement for previous seasons, it's scary, just like Haaland's, right? But there is that unknown. There is that unknown. And will Liverpool take time to settle under the new manager, given that players are coming back late, etc.? And that could affect Salah, right? It's enough, I think, for me to take comfort in going into the season without him. But I would waver day to day. You don't want to be influenced by pre-season, but if Liverpool, in the remaining pre-seasons suddenly click and Salah gets goals, it is undeniably going to be a thing that feeds the narrative that you have to start the season with him. At the moment, I'm probably going without him, but it is tough when you look at the data that supports it. It's and just for context. Go on.
I'm just going. We've kind of gone different ways because I was kind of set on not having him. You had him in your first draft, and then as the weeks are going on, I can just feel myself being more and more like I've tried a few drafts, just putting him in just to see, and I'm like, oh, that does mean I'm weak here and here, but yeah, I can feel myself going the other way where actually I do have him in game week 1, whereas you're kind of moving the other way. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, the dial will move back and forth in the 3 weeks that remain. Just for context, his XGI non-penalty per 90 up 0.16 from last season. The highest that we see here in this table, and this is a table of midfielders, I think there's about 30 in the screen, ranked by points per 90, is Brennan Johnson 0.34. He had the biggest increase in XGI non-penalty per 90 from 22-23 to 23-24. His jump was 0.34. Salah's was half that, but it's still significant. 0.16, as you see from the rest of this table, is a significant jump. You look at Anthony Gordon. Everyone thought Anthony Gordon had an amazing season. He did, but his XGI non-penalty only went up by 0.11 from his previous season. That's lower than Salah's jump. So that's for context. Salah's season wasn't statistically a weak season at all. His output did drop, and perhaps the quality of chance that he had or the quality of his shots that he had was lower, but his volume was still very high, which is why you see the increase. And he created more, didn't he? That was it. His creativity has gone up season upon season over the last couple of seasons. He's been more of a player, especially with Darwin or Gakpo in a central role, to set up others. That's what he's progressed to become.
He just hasn't got anyone that has his own level of clinical finishing. As it kind of transpires, because you can create as many chances as you want for Darwin Núñez, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get them converted. Interesting position like that centre forward spot, because I think Jota still is Jota is the best finisher in that team. So I do wonder if a fully fit Jota is going to be the kind of that missing link, for Salah's kind of creativity, because Gakpo has had a good Euros and did okay towards the end of last season, but I don't really see him as like the starting centre forward for Liverpool, and I don't think Darwin's good enough to do it either. So there's an opportunity there, I think, for Jota to come in and do well, but you're not going to start the season with him FPL wise, are you? Because he wasn't even in your predicted team that he showed a minute ago.
Mr. V, very right. Only 28 starts, so he's down 10 starts. Still 211. Still, the data is there. So the number of minutes is a factor in the fact that we're not calling him essential, and we're not.
He just found a way, didn't he? There was so many games last season where he just looked off it and would still find a way to get a goal or come away with some points.
Looking down the table, we are going to talk about Eze later, but he's very strong. He's XGI non-penalty up by 0.28. That's a player that we're going to go back to as the show continues. I'm going to look now at the bracket of midfielders that you spoke about earlier, around the 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5 bracket. A lot of interest in this area. I think we've got a lot of choice here. I mean, some of the players that we've got highlighted here, Madueke, Bailey, Hudson-Odoi, Wang, Neto, Brennan Johnson, Kudos. Of course, Morgan Rogers, who's showing up in pre-season, is a new name. It's interesting that he shows up quite high here anyway, even before the pre-season that he's having. 4.95 points per 90 and 8 starts is strong. Garnacho, Gross, Ward-Prowse, Pereira, Szoboszlai, Gibbs White. There's a lot of choice in this bracket, right? And I think most of us are going to start with probably 2, maybe even 3 in this bracket, depending if you're going with Salah. We are spoilt here. So the ability to go Haaland is helped by the fact that there is a lot of choice in midfield in this bracket. And a lot of these players could easily exceed this price tag as well, couldn't they?
Yeah, well, also we're going to talk about forwards in a bit, but also, you know, we've got João Pedro that we mentioned on the last stream. You've got Armstrong. You've got Muniz.
Yeah.
When I forgot, like, again, the 5.56 million. So there is a lot of ways you can interchange it. I mean, Minter is someone that I really like of Brighton as well. 2 goals in pre-season for him, signed for big money
5.5
from Newcastle,
yeah.
At 5.5, exactly. So there's kind of, you know, and Rodgers is only 5. So there's players that you can run to, even if you do go for a 5.5 or 6 million asset down to those. Gordon is the one who is a little bit more. So, you know, Gordon is kind of this 7.5 million midfielder, but they're obviously good midfielders are cheaper than him. Interesting you mentioned Brennan Johnson, because Brennan Johnson's XG is almost identical to Gordon's, but Johnson got 5 goals and Gordon got 11. So what does that tell you about those players? Is it, you know, is Brennan Johnson's XG being that high really good for him because we think he's going to get more goals next season? Or is it worth paying the extra money for identical XG in Gordon, but you know he's more clinical? Or does Gordon regress next season and Johnson increases? It's a bit of a coin flip, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Brennan is a good finisher, and you're paying $1 million less. I think he's one of the 6.5s that is very, very tempting. And you're right. Again, we talk about the value players, and Rodgers and Minte, if they take their pre-season form into FPL, they're the ones that are going to be the bandwagons. They're the ones that are going to be like really flying early season. And if you don't start the season with them, they're the ones that are likely to get the price rises. I've just lost Az for some reason. Don't know where he's gone there. That's interesting. But I can carry on. Oh, he's back now. Yeah, so you lost your internet connection there, Az?
No, sorry. I closed the StreamYard window by accident. And then
okay. I'm back. No worries. The beauty of StreamYard is it carries on. I was saying that you know, we talked about Barco and the fact if you don't get on him and he flies early season, his price is going to accelerate. It's the same for Rodgers. It's the same for Minte. If they start the season as they're playing pre-season now, then they're going to be the bandwagons, right? So you know, you're going to be sitting on a 6.5 or 7 or 7.5 midfielder thinking, shall I move down to Rodgers? Shall I move down to Minte? And watching the 0-1s stack up. So is it best to go in with one of these in anticipation of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's easier to move down though, isn't it, than move across? I mean, if you do start with a Rodgers or a Minter and Jacob Ramsey comes back in and Adingra threatens Brighton, then you could argue that it's difficult to then move that player, you know, up to someone else. But you might find it hard to, I don't know. I just think if you are picking these players, you've got to give them a couple of weeks, haven't you? So the knee-jerk element is that the balance between the knee-jerk and being patient with your team is something that's one of the skills of FPL.
Yeah,
I think, and you know, like last season, we both picked Richarlison, didn't we? And there was so many. Like Mbomo started off really strongly, Mitoma started off really strongly, and we stuck with him. Watched Mbomo as a perfect example go up to pretty well about 7 million, didn't he, from 6.5, and while Richarlison dropped to about 6-7 or something. It was an absolute disaster for both of us. So yeah, I mean, I look at Rodgers and think, again, similar to what I was talking about with Barco. I think if Rodgers starts strongly, if Rodgers gets a goal game week 1, which he could well do because he's already having good pre-season, already, you know, shown that he can do it in the Premier League. He's got the added competition around him, but the fixtures are really good. If he gets a goal game week 1, that's going to be another bandwagon that happens really quickly, and you're going to want to get on that. So yeah, I do think that does need to be a bit of a factor in your kind of decision making. But what do you think, like, in terms of that? Like, say we both start with Brennan Johnson, perfect example.
Yeah.
And he has 2 games where he looks all right, but he hasn't got any attacking returns. And Rodgers gets 2 and 2.
You move. I mean, Brennan, for me, if I go with him, it's all about Leicester and Everton, right? You've got Leicester away, Everton at home. So I expect him to show up for those 2 games and either give me returns or look very likely to get returns. Then his fixtures stiffen, I think. I mean, we'll bring the ticker up and have a look. But I think, then his fixtures, it's Newcastle and Arsenal before he plays Brentford and United. If I do go with Brennan, then I think that I'm going to give him at least those 2 games. But you're right. I mean, Rodgers' price will start shooting up, won't it? If he scores at West Ham game week 1, Rodgers will go up 0-1, 0-2 in the first game week. No question. So what do you do? I guess a lot of it has to do with what noises Villa are making in the transfer market. It's said in the chat. There we go. Yeah. So are they gonna backfill Diaby and get more attacking threat? I mean, Diaby was a threat to Leon Bailey, who's right at the top of this list, and we haven't even spoke about Bailey yet, but more on him as we go on. There's gonna be more attacking recruits coming in, you think, for Villa, especially if they lose Duran to West Ham, which has been widely expected. Then there's going to be more bodies through the door for Villa. And so there could be threats coming to Morgan Rodgers' start.
Well, as we sit here now, Philogene,
who they let go to Hull City, then re-signed. They acted on the clause to sign him back. He will be the threat out wide to Bailey, although I think less of a threat than Diaby was to Bailey. So I think Bailey his minutes are more secure than they were last season, pending fitness. But Rodgers is in that role where I expect them. They've let Zaniolo go. I think that there'll be other players coming in who will be a threat to Rodgers. So I don't know post 31st of August when the window closes whether Rodgers won't be as secure. I don't think he will be.
Yeah, I mean, I like we're going to talk drafts in a bit, but I mean, I've got Minter and Rodgers
at
the moment in this draft, which is difficult to run away from if both of those players don't deliver. It means I'm probably going to end up. I've got Muniz on the bench up front, so obviously he can come in for one, and then but I'll probably be playing a back 4. So it's important to make sure you've got that decent 4.5 option, which is where Castagna could maybe come back in. But do I love having 2 quite risky players? Like, having one of Rodgers or Minter feels okay because it's a bit of a punt. They're cheap. If it doesn't work out, you can move away. But maybe having both is a bit too much. But yeah, Rodgers just has so much potential because I really rate him. I think every time I've seen him play, he's looked brilliant. And I expect him to start the season. It's just can he deliver right from the start, because he'll need to stand team.
Interesting. Gibbs White versus Hudson-Odoi. Hudson-Odoi points per 90, 5.30. Gibbs White 4.05, and also Gibbs White his points per 90 down by 0.009. His XGI up a little bit, 0.04. His seasons are almost identical for Forest in many ways. His shot accuracy was halved last season compared to the previous, so he needs to get to be more of a goal threat. The penalties are in Gibbs White's favour. The X-mins are in Gibbs White's favour. Is that enough to make the 1-0, well, a million difference? Is that enough for you? Because I do think if they were both guaranteed X-mins, if they're both level on X-mins, Hudson-Odoi would edge it for me, even with Pens or Gibbs White. But the X-mins is certainly in Gibbs White's favour. There's going to be threats to Hudson-Odoi's start. But Gibbs White is in my team at the moment, mainly because of Forest fixtures rather than my bias. But yeah, Hudson-Odoi is another in the 5-5 bracket like Minter, who's very tempting, isn't he? Because he's high on this table.
Yeah, he is, and good fixtures as well. I mean, don't get me wrong with Minter as well. I mean, there is a threat to his. We paid 30 million for him, and he's on the right. But we've got so many attacking options that can play on the right. Adingra obviously played there last season.
You held on to him. I thought he was going to go.
Yeah, I mean, he could still go. I think we're overstacked really across that forward line. Sarmiento's come back. He was on loan at Ipswich. He scored a couple of goals pre-season. I can see him maybe staying around because he gives us something a bit different. obviously João Pedro to come back, Solly March on the right as well. Like when he comes back, you know, he's very versatile. He can play anywhere. But again, these are all options for us at a right wing. So I like the Minter pick, but it comes with that risk. And I think it's the same with Hudson-Odoi too. I think the difference in $1 million from Minter to Mitoma is a bit more negligible, because I think, you know, Mitoma's obviously an amazing player, but hasn't really got the set pieces. He's pretty nailed on, and that's what you get, but hasn't really got a lot else. Whereas I think kind of like for like, if they're both playing 90, I don't think there's going to be a huge amount in it between him and Minter, and I think Minter will nail down that right wing spot. But Gibbs White, with all the set pieces, with the penalties, to the fact that he's so ridiculously consistent, 5 goals, 12 assists in both seasons, yeah, is amazing, with a slightly better XGI last season and then the one before. But that feels like money well spent on that 1 million.
I mean, if you're looking at players that you expect the trajectory to go up, in other words, do I expect Gibbs White to be worth more than 6.5 next season? Yes. Yeah. I think he'll probably push into the 7 million bracket, because I do think he will up his goal count. I think the assists will probably jump by a couple, because I think we'll score more goals. We scored more goals under Nuno, but Nuno was only there for the half the season. A full season of Nuno with better players. I hope we're not going to be fighting relegation. I think Gibbs White will push on. I think he'll be worth it because of the X-Mins. Hudson-Odoi has a threat to his start. Yeah, I don't think Alanga will be in the first 11. I think we've got Elliot Anderson who could play his role, and I think we're still recruiting. We know we're going to sign another winger. We were after Ramon Sousa, and we were bidding for him, but I think that's gone now. I think we've let that one go. But I think we are definitely going to sign another wide player, and we're not always going to play 2 wingers. So often it's going to be 1 from 3. And Anderson could make it 1 from 4 if Anderson doesn't get a midfield role. So definitely Gibbs White is, for X-Men's and Pens, is the secure pick if you can find the extra $1 million. But Hudson-Odoi alongside Minte and maybe Semenyo at 5.5, very, very good pick. Very good pick, there's no doubt.
I mean, the issue with these players is if you've got another player, like say you've got Hudson-Odoi and Muniz, for example, and you kind of happy to kind of rotate them around and kind of see how things are. That's fine. You don't want to be too like if you've got Hudson-Odoi as your 4th midfielder, for example, and no bench. That's when I think you might run into some problems. I think people are going to do that because they're going to stack with Haaland and Salah and Vardiol and not have the money. I just don't like owning a player who, when Forest, you know, it's 0-0 after 60 minutes, the sub score goes up. And it's like, you just know, obviously it's going to be Hudson-Odoi going off because
Alanga will be on the bench, fresh legs, and away from home, I think Anderson will play, and we'll play a lot more narrow. We won't play any wingers away from home and try and keep possession, and then bring them on final 20 minutes. Tired legs, Hudson-Odoi, Alanga on they come. I think that could happen, right?
It could well be, it could be the same with Minter. He's someone who they could decide, we need someone else on. I mean, the thing with him is that there are the players that would come on for him are quite like. Like if they want a bit more pace or kind of whatever, well, you look at Adingra, quite a tricky winger. That's what Minter is. You bring on March, maybe you get a bit more energy, but that's more to like see out a game. I don't know if you're going to make that move if you're kind of 0-0. Whereas Hudson-Odoi could be a complete system change or bring on a completely different player. So I think it's a little bit different. I'm kind of more secure in a way with Minter, but then he hasn't had a Premier League appearance yet, so we'll have to wait and see for that. I prefer Minter to Hudson-Odoi basically.
Do you? Okay, interesting. Okay, let's look at forwards. We're going to go back to all these positions in a bit when we look at a different metric, but just for points per 90, no surprise to see Haaland there, 7.65 out on top from Isak. The darlings of pre-season, these two up front, 6.86 from Isak points per 90. Then it's Marteta 6.51, Chris Wood on 6.51. And Watkins, who had an outstanding season, but still 6.38 points per 90. He had the most appearances by far of those 5, 37 starts compared to Wood on 20, Mateta 25, Isak 27, and Erling Haaland on 29. Right now, I'm seeing Isak in almost every single draft. I don't think that's going to change, is it? No question for me. Because of the fixture, opening day fixture against Southampton, penalties, Newcastle expected to win. And Isak was pretty exceptional last season. No threat from Callum Wilson either, because we think Callum's going to be injured.
No, I mean 21 goals for Isak last season. I think the season before we knew he was obviously quality and he scored some great ones, but would he be challenging for a golden boot with Callum Wilson around and, you know, sometimes playing on the left? Well, he put that to bed by kind of what he brings in. And I think Wilson's out again, isn't he? He's injured, and I think they need to sign someone really, you know, to come in and, I mean, not even competition, because I don't think there is any competition to reset. They're not going to get any better than him, but someone that can, needed Chris Wood, basically, you know, someone who could come in and do a job if needed. But yeah, I mean, 55% ownership for Isak, so 45% of players haven't got him. I just find that unbelievable. I mean, I look around my team and just think, you know, you could make a case for any of them kind of dropping in and out, and you know, you could change the whole team, and you can make two completely different teams. But if I saw a team without Isak in it, I'd be like, what are you doing? Southampton at home, game week 1. That is arguably the best captain, you know, that week. And if he does well in that first week, then you're going to be really behind. I just don't know why you wouldn't go with him. And it's funny, you know, with Watkins, for example, Watkins has got a really good run of fixtures, but I still see him as kind of, you can go without him, whereas Isak, I don't.
I think the narrative on Watkins is the 18 assists aren't going to drop again, which is, I think that's fair. I think it's fair to say. I mean, it's very unlikely he's going to hit those heights with the assists. He could up his goal count.
His expected assist was ridiculous, wasn't it? It was like, 4. Yeah, 18 assists, expected assists of 4. That's what?
I mean, his chances created per 90 were up 0.37. His shots in the box up 0.35. His XGI non-penalty was only up 0.09. So not a huge jump in XGI non-penalty compared to Isak at 0.25. But yeah, I think we're taking it that he's going to regress because of this, because of the assists. And if we knew he had penalties, it might be different, but we don't see it, do we? We're not absolutely certain that's going to be the case. So Isak is the preferred because of the fixture and because of that. I don't think, you know, if you're going without Haaland, Isak, Watkins is totally fine, no question. They're the front two that you would have. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the only problem with that is unless you're going for Foden and getting on that early, you're kind of probably not going to have a City attacker, because again, I think similar to Liverpool, it's Haaland, Foden or bust, in the same way that you've got Trent and Salah or bust. I mean, you could argue that Gvardiol is an attacking option, and he potentially is, but you're not going to be going near anyone else, are you? I mean, Rodri was on the last table, but he had a good season goal-wise, but you're not going to be picking him because we don't want to be picking defensive midfielders for our attacking positions. So you can go. It's just why I like Haaland so much, because I just want to tap into that City attack with the player, you know, who's at the top of these charts. Even though his points per 90 was down overall compared to his first season, his points per 90 was still the best in the league.
Yeah, just looking at the XGI non-penalty per 90, the big jump really we see, Chris Wood is the highest 0.39 increase. He was outstanding under Nuno. Yeah, I mean, you know, Harry's raising the question here about him versus Muniz in the 6 million bracket. He starts the season because Awani's not going to get enough minutes under his belt pre-season. There are 2 factors here, though. Awani will eventually get fit, and probably is the better player because he offers us pace. He offers us that run in behind, whilst also presenting a physical presence as well. So he gives us a lot of what Wood does, but with pace and a bit more power, I would say. So when fit, Awani will play matches. It will start matches, no question. Maybe not all of them. We may alternate, but he'll certainly be favoured away from home because of his pace. Also, we're going to sign another striker. We are going to. Now, what pedigree of striker we can get in with the money that we can throw at that, I don't know. It could be, you know, someone, you know, we were looking at players like Adams and Iheanacho, so it could be someone of that calibre who's definitely just going to be a stand-in, someone to come in the last 10 minutes.
Where's he these days?
He's just about to move to Seville, I believe. So he's on a free from Leicester. So I don't think we're going to splash like 30 million on a striker. So I don't think we're going to bring in anyone but an understudy. But even so, it's going to take Mins off of Wood. So he'll start the season for sure, and he'll probably get the first 2 or 3 game weeks before Awani becomes a factor. So it's a question of whether you think that's enough. Harry says Wood versus Muniz is interesting for me, and we're going to see this in later screens. Muniz is clear favourite for me.
I don't even think it is interesting. I don't even think there's a debate there at all. I think if Muniz should be 6'5", because I think he, you know, and the fact Fulham have got such strong fixtures, and he's only going to get better, I think. Whereas it's Chris Wood, and I still have my doubts about him, and he is effective in what he does, but he's like you say, he's not the first choice striker for Forest, and I don't really want to be starting with someone who I'm going to get 2 or 3 weeks out. Best case scenario.
Yeah.
So for me,
and
Muniz
not on pens either.
No, Muniz is
not that Muniz is, but Wood won't be taking pens while Gibbs White's on the pitch. Havertz in this table.
Sorry, who is on pens for Fulham? Do we know?
For Fulham, be Pereira, and we'll talk about him in a bit. So Pereira, we presume, is going to be taken.
It's definitely Pereira.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So Havertz is in this table with his points that he would have got as a striker. So it's the only player I've done this with. So yes, he would have had a drop of 17 points, which still gave him points per 90 of 6.15. Now, what's interesting here, Havertz is 8 million, and I'm seeing Solanke getting some traffic pre-season at 7.5, but his points per million was 4.74. He did play, like Watkins, 37 starts. But Havertz, unless Arsenal go out and sign a striker, will probably start the season in that central attacking role, having flourished in that role for the 2/3 of the season under Arteta. He's 0.5 more. Yes, he doesn't have pens, but is that enough to get Solanke the nod over Havertz, do you think? Because that's what we're seeing. I'm seeing Solanke in more teams, and certainly review certainly favours Solanke over Havertz as well. What do you think about Solanke down here in this table? Because all his indicators are up. Points per 90 up 0.65. XGI non-penalty per 90 up 0.16. But he's not, I don't know, I wouldn't describe him as a sexy pick, is he? If it's possible.
He killed me last season at so many different parts. I mean, you got 19 goals. You can't overlook that playing for a good Bournemouth side. I really like what the manager's done and what he's brought in and their kind of style of play. And he is the real kind of focal point and the talisman of that team. I wonder with Havertz, what's going to happen in terms of, does he just carry on from where he got to last season, which was kind of almost becoming that kind of talismanic figure up front, and his kind of relationship with all the other players working around him, because there's so much talent in those attacking areas. But there's always that threat of Jesus.
Yeah,
isn't there?
That's what George Ephraimidis says here. Yeah, Jesus could start any time and send him to the bench. So that probably is the factor, right? It's ex-Mins, isn't it?
That's it. I mean, for that to happen, Havertz would have to have a big drop off, I think. And if he does have that big drop off, then you're probably going to be looking to move him on for Solanke anyway. So I think Havertz is pretty safe to start the season with. And if I was picking one to start the season with, I would pick Havertz
over Solanke.
Yeah, I think so, because I think where you can, you prioritise the players playing for the top sides in the league. And maybe Bournemouth have another good season. Maybe Solanke goes on and hits another 20 goals, but it's more likely he's going to regress down. And I think there's more chance that Havertz carries on doing well, and Arsenal are going to be they're going to be second again, aren't they? Realistically. And he's probably going to have a major part. And like you said, I mean, he came into the team late, towards the end of last season, and never really looked back. So yeah, I think I'd lean toward Havertz out of the two, but I always get it wrong with Solanke, so take it with a pinch of salt.
It's not. I mean, Bournemouth go to Forest on the opening day, which I don't think is an easy game for Bournemouth. We are defensively stronger than the league position. I think we were the 6th best for XGI conceded non-penalty last season. After Forest away, they go at home to Newcastle, then Everton away, Chelsea at home, Liverpool away. It's not a great start, is it, for Bournemouth? So I can see why people are cautious. But like I say, the algorithm favours Solanke at the moment. I think X-Mins and Pens, like it loves Bruno for that same reason. Yeah. X-Mins and Pens wins out for the algorithms, and Solanke fits that definitely.
You can't go wrong with either of them. I think they're both good picks. I think if you want them and you've got them in your side, either of them, I wouldn't say don't have Solanke. Make sure you get Havertz instead, or if you've got Havertz, make sure you have Solanke. I think they're both good picks within their own right. I haven't got either of them. I just maybe lean towards.
I favour Havertz as well.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into the value then, because this is called Bargain Hunt, and this is where we start looking at value. So what I started to look at is some indexes for value, and I started with points per 90, which we've been looking up until now, and then divided that by price. So we get a kind of an index score for points per 90 divided by price, and then we start getting the ratings for that. So all the players that are in pink here are the players that we've been highlighting throughout the table so far, but they're ranked by points per 90 divided by price. So in other words, it's a different metric to the way that FPL do value. I think they do points divided by millions. I've gone points per 90 because I think over the season we've got a season's worth of data to go with. It's a better metric. So this is where it starts getting a little bit interesting. It's going to get even more interesting when I introduce fixtures as a metric in a moment. But let's just look at it in terms of points per 90. This is where, we've talked about Chris Wood, but Bailey and Rogers really come into it. Bailey at 6.5. He's coming out in this index, points per 90 divided by price at 0.99, the same as Rogers. Hudson-Odoi is there. Muniz, we spoke about, is there as well. These players are all ranking high. I think the X-Mins for Bailey and for Muniz are pretty strong. So I don't worry about those two, pending any new transfers in for Villa, which we think will come, but for now. So I think that, if you're looking to get some value into your team, those two are very strong. We haven't talked about Leon Bailey yet. Where do you stand on him? Because he did be okay last season without being spectacular. Yeah. But do you think, he's starting pre-season, he started both the friendlies so far. He's been under the radar somewhat. I think he's got 1 assist, but nothing crazy yet. Having a Villa player, though, if you don't have Watkins and you don't gamble on Rodgers, Bailey's not a bad option, is he?
Well, trouble is he's a Mark Southerns player. Can't. He's tainted goods for me. If I had to enjoy Bailey's points, it would be reminiscent of last season when you were getting all of Bailey's points. Whether you play, you were so good at playing him at the right times or choosing not to. Again, I find it hard with him because I do worry about those minutes. I do worry about the signings they might potentially make, and he feels maybe a bit too covery because you want Watkins ideally, but you're going to be going for Bailey anyway. And at 6.5. You could have the talisman of Forest in Hudson-Odoi. You could have Brennan Johnson, whose XGI was really high and he kind of underperformed against. Would I put him in those brackets? Oh, I don't know. He's not for me. Yeah. Why are you even asking me? You're the Bailey's
I just think he's been largely ignored. I think when people talk about differentials going into the season, Bailey will be on that list. It's going to be tiny. And there's some good parts. Omar says, Rodgers, Ramsey, McGinn, Tielemans, Onana, Barkley, Buendia. I don't think some of those players are a threat to Bailey. Maybe Buendia. I don't think Barkley, Onana, Tielemans are a threat to Bailey. I think he starts at the moment. Rodgers is, I don't see him playing wide left. Wide right, which is where Bailey plays. Could do, but he hasn't up till now. Diaby was the big threat and he's left, but they will be expected to play. Philomene, who they've got back from Hull, could be on his X-Men's, but I think that he's definitely going to be when articles are being written on differentials, Bailey's going to be in there because of the fixtures Villa have got. If we look at the ticker and where they come out, they're third on the ticker behind. We've already mentioned Liverpool and Fulham. But they've got West Ham away, Arsenal at home, okay. But then it's Leicester, Everton, Wolves, Ipswich. That run of 4 from 3 to 6 is incredibly strong. And not having a Villa attacker in that phase looks
I'm
fully,
getting a Villa attacker in for 3. I'm hoping that Rodgers kind of is the one that I can kind of get away with. But that could be the time where I'm looking at Haaland and thinking, well, you're going down to Watkins and then someone else is going up to Foden. Because Watkins for that run could be, if you haven't got him for that run, it could be really painful.
Yeah, fair enough. Right, so we're gonna
is Bailey going to be enough? I don't know. Jury's out.
We're gonna throw in another metric now. We're going to throw in the fixtures, right? So this is that value metric, which is basically points per 90 divided by cost. But then also I've built an index which puts in the difficulty of the first 6 game weeks for their team. This table shows all those players, but we're going to look at it position by position, starting with goalkeepers. So in the 6 game week value index, the keepers coming out on top is Alisson, Leno, Martinez, Pickford, Pope, right? Now, the goalkeeper position, there's a lot of pink in this table, which basically shows that goalkeepers last season compared to 22-23 have been in decline for points per 90. And I think that's going to continue. The BPS changes are just going to give goalkeepers another smack round the chops in terms of their output and points. So, Pickford is the highest 5 million keeper here who I see in teams. I'm not seeing Leno in many teams, not seeing Alisson. I've seen a few Martinez, not seeing many Pope. I had Sanchez before, but at 5 million, Pickford seems to be the pick. I mean, Leno would make sense because he's got great fixtures. He should still get save points. I don't know what bonus threats of Fulham have got. They've got Muniz, they've got Pereira, but it's not a team bristling with attacking bonus threats. So Leno could still do okay. But his points per 90 last season, even though he started so strongly, was still down by 0.44, even with the start that he had. So are we going to go 5 million for a keeper, or are we going to go straight to a 4-5 like a Henderson, like an Areola, like a Flecken?
Yeah, I mean, Sanchez was popular, wasn't he? But he's already had a howler in their game against Celtic, and they're looking to bring in a new keeper.
Well, they've got a new keeper. Jurgensen has arrived.
As he signed. Well, and there's Petrovic as well, who I think is a better keeper than Sanchez anyway. So I was never really too sold on that. Now I think he's completely dead in the water to pick. Pickford's now lost Onana to Villa. Don't think that can be underestimated. He's such a key player for that side and did so much defensive work for them.
True.
I mean, Sean Dyche will find a way to still grind out the 1-0s, but it's not like Everton have strengthened on last season. I think they're a weaker team than they were last year, albeit a bit of a richer team, which drops you down to the 4-5s. And I think, when you've got Flecken, when you've got Neto, when you've got whoever the Forest keeper's going to be, if we work out who's going to be number one out of Henderson and Johnson for Palace, these are good picks with the fixtures the way they are in the first 5 or 6. So I don't know why you'd pay extra for a keeper now. And 4-5 all the way.
Yeah, I mean, Muric, his fixtures when he goes to Ipswich, let's have a look at them. I think they obviously start badly, but they've got good home games. Yeah, after the first 2, it's Fulham, Brighton, Southampton, Villa. It does get better. He'll get you save points, but as you saw earlier, he lost all his bonus points.
He's cursed, Muric. Don't get him.
Yeah.
12 bonus all would have been taken away. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I think we're going to be playing safe with the Palace keeper, who we expected to be Henderson, or we're going to be going Flecken, aren't we? I think at 4-5. I think that's the way. Who
do you think the Forest number want to be? Because Sells started the first half, didn't he, of one game? But it was quite a strong lineup. But do you think Miguel's going to come in and take that?
Well, I did expect it to be Miguel, but did you see today we're making moves for Ramsdale? Now, Ramsdale's
another goalkeeper.
Yeah. So basically, we're trying to get Ramsdale in on loan at 4-5. So he's 4-5. So, but if Forest got Ramsdale, I think he would be the way to go because.
What do you need?
Well, it's a key position, isn't it? I'm not against signing Ramsdale. I think he's an outstanding shot stopper. He's not brilliant with his feet, but he's not Matt Turner either. So he's still okay. But. Yeah, so I don't know is the answer to the Forest. But I agree with you. I think the Forest keeper at 4-5 is a good option as well, whoever that may be. But we've got to be certain who that's going to be going in. It could be Sells, it could be Miguel, the new sign-in, but it does look as though we're still shopping.
I can't believe you're signing another goalkeeper.
Well, we don't know, but there were noises made overnight about us looking. Yeah. And interestingly, actually, Ramsdale was at Trent Bridge with his father, and I appear on a Forest podcast for Forest Focus, and we talked about the fact, was Ramsdale at Trent Bridge because he was talking to Forest? And at the time, one of us did speak to him, and Ramsdale said, no, I'm just here to watch the cricket. But now with the stories that broke last night, it does look likely he wasn't just there for the cricket, that he was actually there talking to the club. So there could actually be something in it, because he was in Nottingham mysteriously.
Well, he needs to move, doesn't he?
Right.
He
does, yeah.
Because he's going to be second choice again, and he wants to be playing for England, and he's too good to not be playing regularly. So,
yeah, 4-5, he'd be great.
Just a team with like 10 goalkeepers seems.
No, we got rid of Rockademus for like 23 million. Nothing dodgy there.
No way. 23 million.
Yeah. As part of the Elliot Anderson deal, we signed Elliot. Well, there was 35 million was the price tag for Elliot Anderson, but it seems like we only paid about 15 for him, because most of the fee was they gave us back in Rockademus. So,
oh my God!
Yeah,
wow,
very strange.
It's a shame with Johnson and Henderson, because if you ask a Palace fan who they want in goal, like every single one I've spoken to or seen on Reddit or Twitter or Scout, whoever, a Johnston, 100%, better goalkeeper, better shot stopper. But Henderson seems to be the one who's still got the place. But I do worry about Henderson. I think he's a few clangers away from being dropped.
It's strange because he didn't seem to have that in him when he was at Forest, but since he's been to Palace and maybe the injury, I don't know, he just seems to have shrunk a bit.
Reputation is high at the moment.
No, sure. If you're going to 5, where would you go? Pope, Pickford, Leno, Martinez? There's options, but which one would you favour?
Leno, just because the fixtures are so nice.
Yeah. I mean, that's what this index says, right?
Yeah, the home fixtures are decent. They played 2 promoted sides in the first 5. Probably Leno. For the longer term, I'd probably pick Pope, but we're probably only going to need one for 5 or 6 weeks until we wildcard. So yeah, probably Leno.
Yeah, and up to 5, obviously Alisson and Raya are the picks, 5-5, and I know the review favours Raya at the moment, and he's showing up in a lot of solves. So go in 5-5 to cover the Arsenal defence rather than going 6 million for an Arsenal defender. You can see the logic in it. Obviously, you lose the goal threat, and you probably lose the bonus potential. Not that that's huge for the Arsenal defence, but because of the obviously having Havertz there and Saka there and Odegaard there, I don't think the Arsenal defence get too many. But I think Gabriel and Saliba got about 6 bonus points each last season, even though they kept the 18 clean sheets. So it's not a big step down to go Raya for the 5-5 Arsenal defence. It's not a bad move, is it? To go if Arsenal are going to be the dominant defence, spending 5-5 on Raya is not a bad move.
Nah, I don't hate it. I like the fact he's a bit cheaper because last year Gabriel, Saliba and Raya were all the same price, weren't they? So the fact he's now a 0.5 or a million less than Ben White, for example. Yeah. I just don't want to spend that much on a goalkeeper. No, okay. I just think when you've got I might even end up with Neto, for example, at 4-5, just because Bournemouth were pretty good defensively last year, and he should make some saves. I don't know if I even care about this position this year.
You say that, but when we did our post-mortems, it was the one position that we said, we must get that right, because we were chopping all season. We went Pickford to Areola up to I don't know where. I think I went Flecken for a while.
It's just
never
such
the
6 weeks
around the points, basically.
Yeah, it's just such a lottery. Those 6 weeks, like with Pickford's, he was awful for a while. Then he ended up the top scoring goalkeeper. So I don't know. I think you just pick. I'm just going to pick the best looking 4-5 option that I can do with the pre-season information. I'm going to try and avoid any rotation risks. I'm not going to pair him with another starting goalkeeper, and just hope for the best.
Okay, let's look at defenders.
My great insight.
That's what they pay for. So defenders now. So this is by the 6 game week value index. So points per million divided by cost with the fixture difficulty built in. Bradley, we talked about at the top of the show. If he can start for Liverpool, even if he starts the season at right back, that 5 million, he's right at the top there. Then we talked about Leno and the Fulham defence. Castagna's second. Trent coming in at 0.98 in this index. Then Robertson, and then Robinson. So again, it's dominated by Liverpool and Fulham at the top because of the ticker showed that they've got the best opening to the season. So this would indicate that you've got to have, or you should look to at least 1 Liverpool and or 1 Fulham, given the fixtures, right, and the value that presents. Is that where you're going? You said you got Castagna. You're going to go Trent as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you in the sense that I've got 1 of each. Do I think they're a kind of a must-have? Not necessarily, because I mean we mentioned some of the other 4-5 options in defence that I think are looking good.
Konsa's there, like Konsa's not far down on this table as well.
Yeah, and I won't talk about those again. But then the same with Liverpool, I do worry a little bit that Trent at 7 is quite pricey, and maybe the money can be better invested elsewhere. So defence is a funny one because we talked about the BPS and things like that. So I do really like the Trent and Fulham option, but if you don't have them, I wouldn't worry too much, basically.
I really like Munoz on here. So you go down underneath the Liverpool and Fulham defenders. Then you get to Pau Torres, although his ex-min's not as secure as Konsa. Then you get to Mikalenko, we spoke about, who's definitely the standout Everton defender because you can go there for 4-5. And he looks secure in that role, and he can offer a little bit going forward. Then it's Van Dijk. Then we get to the Palace and Villa defenders. Joachim Anderson, 0.08. Munoz 0.79, and you're paying that 0.5 more for Munoz, but I like him. I think Munoz will kick on further this season, and I'm almost tempted to pay that 0.5 more to have him. Wingback, right?
Yeah, I've got him at the moment. He was really fun. I owned him, for towards the end of last season. He did really well for me. He got 13, 14 points on the final day of the season. I think he got me another double-digit return. I think in the double game week as well. He's you just watch them play and you look at those two wing backs. I mean, with Mitchell as well at 5 on the other side, they're clearly a really, really key component of that team. And with Elise leaving, players like that need to kind of step up and maybe contribute more goals because he was such a big factor for them. I really like the tactics. I really like the structure. I like a lot of the players. I like that Eze's still there. Mateta's obviously stepped up loads. And it's interesting because Anderson at 4.5 or Munoz at 0.5, there is definitely a decision there to be made. I think Gahey's just out of the picture, really, because Anderson's got more goal threat and obviously scored better than he did last season. It's just, do you want to pay the extra 0.5 for Munoz? I'm leaning towards doing it. But like you said, it's that one where if I need that 0.5 somewhere else, that's going to be the first one that I bring down. Yeah,
that's it. That's what I've looked at. I mean, I think he'll be in my lineup that I showed tonight, but he's definitely one that's sacrificable if I need a 0.5. But I just like the idea of going in and further down the list, and we spoke about Ben White. We've got Newcastle defender. It's worth mentioning Livramento. We spoke about earlier. If he looks certain to start because Trippier's going to leave, Livramento would be a factor as well, as could Lewis Hall if he gets the nod over Byrne. Byrne is in this table. But even going down to Porro, even though he's basically his points per 90 went down by 0.73, his XGI non-penalty went down by 0.07, he's still bristling with fun, isn't he? In Angie's team, even at 5.5, the fixtures are decent. I like the idea of going Porro Munoz because of that attacking threat that they bring, and it is. I guess it is going big at the back because you're spending more than you have to because you can go Van de Ven, right? You don't need to spend 5.5. But I just love having those defenders who give me that little bit of hope in terms of attacking output.
I just think if I was picking one, I'd pick Munoz all day over Porro. Yeah, I wouldn't try and again, I think you could potentially cover some of Munoz's points with Anderson because I think they're a better defensive side than Spurs are. And I don't mind Van de Ven, but I think there's better 4 or 5 options than him. So it's kind of Porro or no one in that defense. 5.5. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you could argue like you're comparing a Porro to a Minter or a Hudson-Odoi, and if you play that 4 at the back, maybe you do you look at that and think, is there going to be a lot of difference between Porro and Minter? If you're picking on a draft, for example, which one would you rather have for like 6 weeks?
Well, the X-Men says Porro.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite a close call. So maybe you could do that, but yeah, I don't know. It's a good price. A lot of the prices are really, really good this year. And I think if they'd made Porro 6, for example, it would have killed him completely. But 5.5, just that little bit of carrot. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's 2 good weeks, but I still expect them to concede in both. And I want to see a bit more defensive stability from Spurs before I pay that much.
I think we'll be hoping for that forever. That Postecoglou
not going to happen.
At front foot, isn't it?
Not going to
happen. We're looking now at midfielders. Bailey's at the top. We spoke about him. We spoke about Rodgers. Hudson-Odoi we touched on. Andres Pereira leaps right up there. Right. So not only in terms of his points per 90 divided by cost, and then when you factor in Fulham's good start to the season and you start to talk about penalties, now Pereira's in a lot of the solves on FPL review, and this backs it up because again it's X-Mins, it's penalties and it's fixtures, all in Pereira's favour. 5.5. Not seeing him in a lot of drafts. Obviously with review out now we might start seeing him sneaking in, but he's probably the less sexy pick. So we spoke about Minto, we spoke about Hudson-Odoi. Would you go Pereira? You asked about pens.
Yeah, I think he's a good option. Again, the fixtures are nice. He's 5.5. He's a little bit cheaper than the Muniz, for example. There's some rumours around Smith Rowe, isn't there?
Yeah, he's going. Yeah, but he won't be on pens, but in a similar role.
Yeah, in a similar role. Maybe, do they play 2 10s in that role? Or does Smith Rowe come on the right, can't he, as well? Maybe
he can play wide, yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, we don't really know what's going to happen with there. But at 5.5, I think he's a pretty non what's the word? He's not going to pull up any trees, but he's pretty steady. He's a pretty steady pick. I think is Pereira. I mean, how many attack returns did he actually get last season? Let's have a look. He got 3 goals, 9 assists.
Not bad, is it?
Yeah, it's all right for 5.5. He's all right.
I mean, like I say, it's the pens and the X-Bins that get him up there. Then obviously Eze is very high on this list because of the fixtures and because of the value he offers at 7 million. And we'll look at him in a bit more detail in a minute. In terms of the average fantasy goal involvement, that's the last column in this table, and Eze's at 38%. So basically, over the seasons of the Premier League, he's averaging 38% involvement in Palace's goals and on the pitch. We'll look at that in a bit more detail. Then we've got Szoboszlai there as well, and we talked about him. Now, his goal involvement was low last season, just 17%. I think that'll jump up. But it's significant that he's high on this table, and he's even, he's level with Diaz. He's just above Salah because of the value that he offers, but the fixtures are so strong. So it's exactly what you said, isn't it? That if you're not going Salah, if you're not going Trent, if Szoboszlai continues in that 10 role, he could start appearing in teams, couldn't he?
Yeah, and I think there's maybe a bit less worry about that locking you out of another spot, because the attacking spots are so difficult to call. I can't, in the first 5 or 6 weeks, I just can't see us going for like a Diaz or a Jota or a Gakpo or a Darwin or someone like that. So I think that only really leaves Salah, Trent, and Szoboszlai, or maybe Bradley. That's probably about it, right? It's those three positions for those four. I wouldn't worry too much about thinking that we're going to get too locked in. So he's a punt that we could go for. And again, he's going to be a bandwagon, isn't he? He's going to be a bandwagon if he scores in game week 1. We're going to see a lot of people shifting to a 6-5 starting attacker for Liverpool.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to see him in that role first before I commit.
Are we putting him in ahead of Gibbs White? Are we putting him ahead of the likes of...
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, Brennan Johnson is in my team, but there's others in this bracket as well. Kudos, we've talked about, touched on. I don't know. I mean, for me, I'm thinking about it now, and this table does promote him as someone we should take very seriously. You go down the table, and like I say, Brennan Johnson's in there as well. You go further down in Mbumo, who's been largely overlooked, but he's another review darling because of the X-Mins and the penalties. Brentford's fixtures aren't great, but they're good enough to get him on this table and be a factor. Odegaard versus Saka, I want to talk about briefly, because I've heard a lot of people say Odegaard is good value at 8.5 compared to Saka at 10. And I do get it, but what strikes me, and this is why I've got average fantasy goal involvement on there, 22.3 is his average goal involvement for Arsenal compared to Saka, which I think, we'll bring it up now, is basically, is 33. So here is the Arsenal's average goal involvement based on 5 seasons. Saka last season's goal involvement was 37 compared to Odegaard's 24. Season before that, Saka was 33. Season before that, 38. Then 26, then 32. So his average over 5 seasons is 33.2. Odegaard has never broken into the 30s. So in 22-23, he got 28% involvement in Arsenal's goals when on the pitch. Does that put you off Odegaard, or do you think he can overcome that?
It does put me off him. And we were expecting a bit of regression last season, and we got it. Although did he still get 200 points? He must have been close if he didn't. He got 186. Okay, so he was a little bit off. But I think kind of around that mark is about what we would expect for him. The problem with Odegaard, I seem to remember, was that he was just all or nothing. He was either like a 2 or 3 pointer or like a double digit, 11 or 12. And I don't know, that freaks me out a bit. I prefer the steady eddies, that get you like the 5 and 6s each week, rather than the one who just randomly gets you a 12 or 13. And maybe it's, he does better when Arsenal score a lot of goals, for example, because in the tougher games, maybe that's when he's playing a bit deeper and things like that. Whereas Saka's always going to have the threat from penalties. He's always the one who's getting the ball and trying to be direct. And actually, I think every time I watch Saka, he just seems to be getting more and more direct whenever he's got the ball. I mean, look at him for England. He was incredible when he had the ball and trying to make things happen. Whereas you don't really get that from Odegaard so much. And it is a price increase for him. I know there's less of a difference between him and Saka as there was last year when it was just it was 0.5, wasn't it? 8.5 and 5. But it's still, he's gone up to 8.5, and we've got more premiums now. So the money's more important. It feels like quite a lot of money for him.
The thing is as well, in 22-23, he had some share of penalties, hence why his goal involvement leapt up to 28%. So I think it's fair to say his average is probably going to be around that mark of 22%, maybe 20, maybe up to 25. Is that going to be enough to elevate him, to give him the level of value that you want?
No, I don't know. I think there's better players for cheaper. Like, I'd rather have Gordon at 7.5 than Odegaard at 8.5. and there's better players, around the 9 or 10 mark. Because if you're going for Odegaard, that means you're probably not going to be able to have Watkins or Saka or Foden or Palmer or someone. You're basically sacrificing one of those for Odegaard. That's not for me. He's miles down the list in terms of those.
Yeah. No, I get it. And you look at his points per 90 declined by 0.69 compared to Saka went up 1.25, and his XGI non-penalty per 90 was down 0.02, but Saka was up 0.25. So you're absolutely right. Saka was more direct, more of a goal threat than Odegaard last season. So I still think there's a question mark over Odegaard's value. I can see it because if you're not going Saka, you want to look at either Havertz or Odegaard to cover that Arsenal attack for the opening fixtures. I get it. But I'm yet to be convinced that's something I want to do, because I'd have to make wholesale changes elsewhere to accommodate it.
Yeah, he'll frustrate you, I think. If you're going Odegaard over Saka, you're going to be worried every week as to what the damage could be. And you might get away with it some weeks, but over the course of the season, Saka should comfortably outscore him, I would have thought.
Yeah, but this is just the first 5 or 6, isn't it? It's just till we wildcard, I guess, is what you're saying. But
do you need an Arsenal coverage for the first 5 or 6? If we're saying that Saka might not even be up to speed for the first few weeks, that makes Arsenal a weaker team anyway.
Yeah, possibly not. Possibly
and the fixtures aren't the best anyway.
No, we've seen it. I want to talk about.
Oh, hang on. FPL Copycat has just said Odegaard's got a goatee, so
that'd be it. That
changes things. Can't imagine him with a goatee.
Yeah, not gonna. I'm sure he's looking ripped pre-season as well. As is the.
That's my criteria now.
One player I did want to pick out for fancy goal involvement is Eze, because we haven't talked about it in a lot of detail, and we don't need to, because I think at 7 million is such value. And this really stood out for me. His fantasy goal involvement over his 4 Premier League seasons has been 39% last season, 40% last season before last, 33 and 40, average 38%. That's huge. Right. And if we think Palace are going to kick on, with him taking penalties and some set plays with Elise not there, you can only see his goal involvement for Palace being around 40%. Now, obviously, they score fewer goals than Arsenal, but even so, when it comes to talisman, Eze's cemented, isn't he? For that?
Well, even more so now that Elise's gone potentially. You'd expect him to have even more of an impact on that. Good fixtures, attacking manager, talisman, decent price. Hasn't left my team. There's no way I won't be starting with Eze. I think he looks great.
Right at the top of this value table, and amongst the higher scorers for fancy goal involvement, you got Eze on 38%, you got Gibbs White on 39.3, talisman for Forest, no doubt, Bruno at 40.6 average for United, and then I think it's only Son that beats that. If you go down to Son, where did I see him? There he is, 43.6 is average over the seasons for Spurs. Absolutely dominates. And that's even, obviously, Kane's played some of those seasons as well.
Yeah.
These are the talisman, but Eze right at the top for value. Very hard to take him out of our teams, I think.
The only worry is, are they going to be a significantly worse team without Elise in? But
I think the fixtures are good enough where I give it a go. I think I'll try it out. I think because of the penalties, and I think Glasner, it will make signings. I mean, they were after Smith Rowe as well. I think that they will need to replace Elise. But I think I've got enough confidence in Glasner and Eze as a player to think that 7 million is worth it. I think. Yeah, I get what you're saying, though. Same question marks when you lose a key player. It is disruptive. Let's briefly look at forwards. And this is where Muniz just jumps to the top for me. Wood and Muniz right at the top of this metric. 1.17 for Wood, 1.16 for Muniz. Mateta's going to miss the start of the season because of the Olympics. And I think we've said 6 million, it's Muniz for me. And you feel the same, right?
Yeah, I mean, he dropped off a bit, didn't he? He had such a good spell where he was scoring almost every week. And then Andy North brought him in and ruined him.
That killed it, yeah.
So, there's a bit of a worry that he's, is he going to, was that it? Was that the purple patch where it's not going to come back? But he's a young player and, I look at his competition, Jimenez is there obviously, but he's not the player that he once was. They've got Vinicius there as well, but really it's going to be Muniz up top, and they're bringing in more creativity. It looks like they're scoring goals in pre-season. Muniz got a goal and an assist in their most recent game. And like we keep saying, the fixtures, 2 promoted teams in the first 3 games, you've got to be considering him, I think, if you're not already. And I think he is going massively under the radar. He's only 5% owned overall.
Surprising.
It is surprising, and I really like it because I think with the fixtures he could be.
I think it's the 5-5. I think it's the Armstrong and João Pedro are probably taking a lot of his traffic. People are going to that, and I get it. I just prefer Muniz, I think, because of the fixtures, and that's what this table would indicate. Just one last thing to pick out here: Haaland, 54% average fantasy goal involvement. So in the 2 seasons, he's got 54% both seasons. That's petrifying, isn't it? When you think Man City are arguably the best attacking side, and he's contributing to 54% of their goals when on the pitch.
I'm so glad they priced him at 15. What a good price to give us this option, because he has got to deliver week in, week out at that price. The stats say that he will. The involvement says that he will. But there was a few times last season when we were a bit like, oh, he doesn't look quite the same. What was it that Bournemouth game when he missed like every chance he had, then got taken off at half time? Yeah, there was that little bit about him when he looked so, so unbeatable before that. I just think he's had a full pre-season now, no Euros to worry about, scoring goals already. Ipswich at home, game week 2. You're a brave manager.
Scary.
I think you don't have him. Yeah.
I mean, just going back to Salah, Haaland's on 54. Salah in this, where is he? His goal involvement 46.4. That is elite. There's no question.
It's high, very high.
It's, incredibly. That's the highest, actually. I got it wrong. It isn't Son at 43.6. It is Salah. He's got the greatest goal involvement share here. And that's over the 5 seasons, of course, as well. It's under Haaland, but it's still, the reason why Haaland and Salah are priced where they are is because of that level.
Look at Neto. I mean, Neto's at 44.
Yeah.
I mean, Wolves don't score many goals.
I mean, if
still high for a 6-5.
Yeah. I mean, but Salah as well is in that bracket, not quite as terrifying as Haaland, but that's why we're paying the big bucks for them. But talking of which, let's look at your team, shall we? Because you've gone just to Haaland for now. Yeah. Has anything you've heard tonight changed your thinking with this team?
It will
change, won't it?
It's made me want Salah more.
Has it?
Definitely made me want Salah more. Yeah, there isn't too many changes here. I mean, it's for podcasters, it's Miguel in goal, Trent, Vardiol, Munoz is in. I think I had Anderson before. Palmer's still there, Gordon's still there, Eze's still there. Minter's come in, who I mentioned earlier. Haaland, Isak, and Muniz, and then a bench of your mate Bentley, who doesn't play for Arsenal. Rogers, Castagna, and Barco. So I think it's Castagna, Muniz, Munoz, and Minter. I think the rest is the same as what I showed last time. But yeah, I feel pretty settled with it. But then we do a pod like this, and I'm like, okay, well, if I bring in Salah, then I've got to take Trent out. That probably means I've got to take Palmer out as well. And then suddenly the whole thing just gets ripped apart, doesn't it? And all the the fact you feel settled means absolutely nothing. So yeah, not really sure what the best thing is. If I do go for Salah, it will be Trent and Palmer out for Salah, and then I'd have 5 million to spend on another defender.
I think if you've stretched to Palmer, I think I'd definitely look to try to get to Salah and see what it does. Because you could lose Trent and get Palmer to Salah, and I'd be inclined to do that. I guess they're both under new managers, so new systems, as we've said. I do worry about going Barco, Rogers, and Minte. I think that's 3 gambles there. 3 X-Men's gambles. So I wouldn't be surprised if you have to dial back on one of those at least.
But then, I mean, Castagna can come in and cover quite nicely in the first couple of weeks because we keep saying the Fulham fixtures are so nice. So, if Minter comes out for Castagna, for example, and then it's Rogers and Minter on the bench, that's not a complete disaster.
I think what I'm doing, and you'll see my team in a minute, is I want to get 13 outfield players that I can play between game weeks 1 and 6 so that I can try and save transfers. So taking risks with Rogers or Barco means, I mean, are you happy just having the potentially just one active sub? That's the thing, right? That's the danger. In order to save transfers and stockpile them until you wildcard, because the utopia is you take 3 or 4 transfers into the wildcard, you wildcard and come out of it with 3 or 4 transfers. Because then if you've wildcarded your team and you have 3, 4, even more transfers, you could dine off on that for ages, couldn't you? Because you don't need to use those 4 in one swoop. You can just pick away at it and always maintain 3 or 4 transfers and be really sitting pretty. But I think you can only do that if you build a squad that gives you enough rotation options that you can absorb an injury, you can absorb one of your players getting dropped, whatever. And that's why when I look at this team, I don't know if you've got that yet.
I think Minter is the kind of he feels the odd one out with this, because I think Rodgers is the kind of the one who maybe could do well, and he's the one. But do I need two like that? Minter feels a bit like a Dingra did for me last year.
Yeah,
where
it really does.
I've got a bit of a Brighton goggles on, and
yeah.
But I think there is an element to that with FPL. Like, I like to own a player from Brighton because
of course.
I like watching Brighton play. Is the same as you with Forest. I mean, maybe Minter needs to go up to a 6-5. Like a Gibbs White does look good, I have to say. A 6-5, particularly if I lose Miguel and I'm not doubled up on them. I don't know. There's still potentially things that could change with this. I mean, Trent, Palmer, and Minter, and the goalkeeper. They're the four that I'm looking at and thinking that could be where the changes are.
And Munoz could come down to us 4-5 as well.
Yeah, I think Haaland, Isak, and Muniz, that will be the front three that I go with. Gordon and Eze, I'm going to stick with those because I like the double up with Newcastle. Vardiol is going to stay in, and Barco and Rodgers. Okay. So I'm probably over halfway there. It's probably like 4 positions I'm looking at.
And my team, quite similar, getting closer to yours. I mean, I haven't seen your team. I've gone Flecken at the moment, Gabriel, Alexander-Arnold, Porro, Munoz, Eze, Gordon, Johnson, Gibbs-White, Isak, Haaland, and a bench of Nkunku, Muniz, and Konsa. So Nkunku, I would say, is probably the risk there because I think he will get minutes. We don't know if he's going to play wide in the 9, in one of the 8s or 10s. He played in an 8 role or a 10 role pre-season so far. And we heard Maraska talking positively about him. I think he will start matches. We don't know what role he'll play. We haven't spoken a lot about him because he obviously wasn't a factor last season, so he hasn't shown up in the data. But he's another one, isn't he, that if you don't have him and he starts the season well, and obviously the City home game gives you time to have a look at him, he's another one that could fly, though, price-wise, couldn't he? Yeah,
absolutely. And, that first week is key because these bandwagons emerge so quickly. I do like this team. The only thing with it is that you haven't got that second sort of premium asset. So, because we're all like, we're not looking at Foden, we're not looking at Saka, but what happens if they do start game week 1 and look really good? Like, Foden could be someone who you want to be able to move for potentially for game week 2 at home to Ipswich if he comes back and looks sharp in the first game. You're not going to be able to do that with one transfer.
The thing is, though, you can't. You're not going to captain that other premium, right? So then the value of that premium versus the 6-5s, the 7s, the 7-5s. Like, I've no doubt Saka will outscore Johnson, but it's a 3.5 million difference, and I'm not going to captain Saka. So that's not while I've got Haaland. I don't think. I mean, I haven't yet analysed 10, 15 game weeks to see the captain where I would captain Saka over Haaland. Or, I mean, Salah, if I went as far as getting Salah, yes, definitely he would rival Haaland for the captaincy. Palmer might, but I need to see Palmer under Maresca first. Saka might, but I don't know. So it's, do I need that premium mid when you know that you're not going to put the captaincy on them that much, and therefore the value of that premium, does that depreciate the value versus someone like Gordon or Eze or Gibbs White? That's the question.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it does, but the premium assets are still the ones who are going to be getting you double-digit points, and there is still more of a risk that a player playing for a Palace or a Johnson or a Gibbs White could blank, whereas you're not expecting Foden to, Foden could get a hat-trick, Saka could get a hat-trick. He's more likely to get those big points than the others, even if they're not captained for you. I mean, there's a lot of money in your defence here. I thought my defence was pricey. You've gone even more expensive. And no, Gvardiol was Gabriel over Gvardiol was interesting.
Gvardiol.
That's what Sam's doing as well.
I mean, looking at the defence, obviously Porro's at risk here. Trent is probably at risk here, and Munoz could go down to a 4-5. So yeah, that could all change, no doubt. The ones that are locked are probably Eze, Gordon, and Isak. Yeah, that's about it from this team. Those three, I don't think they've been in all my drafts and aren't going anywhere. Around that though, I'm toying with the idea of downgrading the defence and then downgrading one of the mids to a 5-5 and going a Foden. Foden's probably the one I'm most inclined to go with because I think at 9-5 he still has that value, and I fully expect him to kick on. I think Saka maybe at 10 million, but I guess it's the Euro thing, isn't it? It's the fatigue game week 1 and seeing it. Both Foden and Saka fall into that trap. So I definitely would wildcard to one of them, I think. But whether I start the season, I don't know. I think there's enough value about to maybe take that risk. But
I think, with your most expensive midfielder being 7.5 and there being so many good like premium options around 10, last season that wouldn't have been too surprising, but this year I think it is maybe a little bit different. So yeah, I think I'd be we've spent 2 podcasts talking about defenders and BPS and all things like that. I'd be surprised if you started this season with so much money tied up in defense.
Camera's just gone off there. I'll turn that back on.
No. At least it's not the stream.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's a concern. That's the one concern, that I don't have a Foden, I don't have a Saka. I don't think I can go to Salah while I've got Haaland. So it's going to be Foden, Saka, maybe Odegaard that I look to. And then it would be losing Johnson, obviously. Of the 3 6-5 mids, he's probably the one that would go. I do fancy Johnson at Leicester and Everton. I think those
I had him. I think at 6.5, it's pretty close. You've got both. I think it's close between Johnson and Gibbs White for me at 6.5. I think it'd be one of those two that I'd go for. There are other good options as well, like we mentioned, like Matoma and others. But I mean, even Garnacho at 6.5, I think is potentially a good price.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. Yeah,
I think Johnson and Gibbs White are the two that take my eye the most.
The thing that appeals to me here, though, is I've got those 13 outfield players that I can rotate. And what I've done, I've looked at the fixtures up to game week 7 and plotted who plays when, and I can feasibly, if I don't have an injury, not be forced into transfers because my 11's not strong enough. So that's what I want to achieve. But the final draft that I go with is a team that can possibly get me to a point where I can bank some transfers before going to the wild card. That's got to be the objective, right? Because that is taking transfers through the chips is huge, and we've got to exploit that. Haven't we?
Yeah, it's got to be. And you're probably right. I think maybe Minter and Rodgers isn't playing into that idea enough, where you can carry one, but potentially carrying 2 or even 3 is too good. Like you say, it's going to be very difficult for us if we're 2 million in the world after 6 game weeks and we've got 1 free transfer, and we're competing against people who are wildcarding and still have 4 or 5 transfers. Yeah. Like it's going to be almost impossible to catch a lot of people up.
I mean,
my camera's gone now.
That's going to be the new factor, isn't it? How many transfers you can take into your wildcard and bring out, because that could be absolutely demoralising if you're behind and you're trying to chase people with 4 or 5 transfers in the bank. Are you back, Az? Have you lost your camera?
Yeah, I have.
Oh, fair enough. No worries. It's the end of the show. We've reached the end anyway.
I just kicked something, so I think it's...
Oh, dear. Never mind. There's bound to be a technical issue somewhere along the line anyway.
Right at the end.
That's fine.
I think this will fix it.
We have 730 joining us on a Sunday evening. We've gone 10 minutes over time. So I need to apologise when I get back in the house, because we've done more than 2 hours. What a surprise. Just more plunging of data, more looking at value really in this podcast, in this stream. We will obviously look at things like pre-season friendlies in weeks to come before we kick off, but there's still 3 weeks to go, and the drafts that you saw tonight will change again, and our thinking will change again. There's no doubt about it.
At least we're not doing the clickbait like my final team for game week 1 or stuff like that. This
just
is
impossible,
the
isn't it?
Draft with
when are the locks going to start appearing on the teams as well? Well, they're the little locks that appear. It's like no one's been brave enough yet. And it's interesting. Reviewers come out, and I've had a look, and the difference between the Salah teams, the Haaland teams, and even the no Salah and Haaland teams is so small that it's given us that dilemma, which is it's really, I don't think many will go without Haaland, because I think the risk is too great.
Yeah,
and I think that narrative is probably correct, but I do think quite easily the no Haaland and the Salah teams could outscore them, no question. So that's the beautiful thing about what we've got this season.
Absolutely,
so many more twists and turns to come in the pre-season before we commit to our teams. We're going to revisit the pre-season's lessons learned next, and we're going to start looking more at the pre-season friendlies. Yeah. So there's more to be done, and we'll look more in detail at rotation pairings and stuff like that. So more to come in the pre-season for Black Box, but thank you to those who joined us for tonight, and thank you, Az, for joining me on this Sunday evening. It was nice, nice change, wasn't it?
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, well done for all the prep as always. Very interesting stuff. You are annoyingly talking me into Salah, which is not something I had
I haven't
really
even
considered.
Got him myself, but
I know, I couldn't believe
it's the
when I saw your
FOMO,
team
isn't it?
Without him. Yeah, kind of feel like I might end up with him now, but yeah, no, good stream as always.
It's a good night for me.
Good night, everyone. Wow, look at that.